So hey guys, how's it going on? Welcome back to a brand new episode, and today in this episode we are going to build this to-do list application. So in the previous video we learned about nodejs and expressjs and how to build our API, very first API. And so in today's video we are going to build all the other API routes for this to-do list application, and we are going to integrate it with the React application. So in this video we are going to learn a few more technologies, one of which is Tailwind CSS. So Tailwind CSS is a CSS preprocessor. So with the help of Tailwind CSS, we can write CSS even quickly using some short keywords like this. We can write Tailwind CSS in the inline JSX itself. We don't need to create any external files or anything. And we will be using Material UI for icons. We have a wide library of icons in Material UI. We can use any of these icons. How to use this, how to use Tailwind CSS in your White Plus React application. I'm going to teach you all that in this episode. So this episode is going to be quite lengthy and very important to make you the Mern stack developer you were always dreaming of. So yeah, this video is very important. So let's get ahead without any further ado and let's see what we are going to build in this video. So this is a basic to-do list application, but this time, this Todolist application is going to save user data separately. Now, currently I'm logged in as some user. So let me just open the incognito mode and let me just say localhost 5173 here. So you can see initially no user is logged in. So I will be redirected to the login page. So I don't know any user account. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on register and I'm going to register an account. So let's say, let's give it a name. Let's make it 100%. So let's give it a name of let's say Isagi, and I'm going to give him a random email. Let's say isagi@gmail.com, and I'm going to give it a password. And if I click and register, it will redirect me to login page. Now if I again log in, isagi@gmail.com, and if I do password 123456789, that's the password. If I click on login, you will see I'm logged in. Currently this user has no tasks. I'm going to create his task 1, or let's say go for soccer practice. I'll just say this, and I will click on add button. You will see this task is created. Now this button I can use it to mark it as completed, and when I click on it I can change its title, and let's make it, this is the title. And similarly we can add more, let's say complete the contest analysis, something like this. And if I hit plus, you will see this is added. Now let's say we want to edit this, go for soccer practice at 5 p.m. is what I want to say, and I add a description. Go to the club venue and practice maybe shoots. It's just a random text, okay? And if I click on edit, you'll see go for soccer practice and go for soccer practice at, okay, I'm clicking on it. So yeah, go for soccer practice at 5 p.m. and go to the club venue at practice shoots. This is the description. If I unmark it, it will be unmarked. And yeah, if I mark it, it will be marked, and it will be in a different shade as well. This is how I can add description to it. I can change the title. I can even delete it. It's now deleted. So now we can have this for the different users. If I refresh it, you will see this user doesn't have any of those. So if I add another task, let's say some random task 1, hit enter, task 1, task 2. So yeah, you won't see these tasks any of them here. If I show you database, we have different users here. You can see we have different users and we have different tasks which have been created and deleted and stuff. So complete the contest analysis, task 1, task 2. Each task is associated with some user, and this is how we are linking a user to his task and a task to his user. Like that, this is what. Now all these cool features from complete styling using Tailwind CSS we are going to build in this episode. So stay tuned and watch till the end and make sure that you code alongside me. Okay. So that's it for the intro. Let's get started and let's start to code this episode. All right. So let's start without any further ado. So let's start by continuing the code where we left off in the previous video. So let me just start the server again. So if I go to, let's say, cd server, and then if I say node mon index.js and hit enter, this will start my server, and you can see server is up and running on port 3001 and DB connection successful. Now let's try the same route again if it's working fine. If I just change the name to, let's say, Sasuke this time, and then let's make this Sasuke@gmail.com. If I hit send, so yeah, the connection is true, and this data would have been saved into my database. Now that much part is cool. Now the next process, let's start building the client, the setup for the client, and let's first implement this register function front end, and then let's see if we are able to connect the front end and back end for the registering process, and then we will go on for the next features. All right. So guys, to create the front end, we are again going to use white.js. As I said, it is faster and more efficient. So yes, we are going to create a white application, but along with it, as I already said, we are going to use Tailwind CSS for styling. So yes, you are going to learn something new, like for styling. Now, what is Tailwind CSS in the first place? If I show you their website, can see Tailwind CSS is a rapidly building modern website. So like what it is you can write inline CSS using some small properties. Now these are properties which you need to remember. You can't just learn Tailwind CSS in like some hours. It comes along with practice. So for this video, I'm going to show you how to actually implement it and all the rapid stuff. And from the next time, like see, you can give class name something like this. Now this rounded excel will give us a border radius of some excel size, something like that. They have predefined all of these. This will set the width to something, and yeah, we are going to cover all that in this episode. So yeah, just feel free and just be ready to inhale it into your brains. All right, that is what I want to say. So to implement Tailwind CSS along with white.js, there is a certain process which you need to follow. So the link to of this thing will be in the description. You can just go at it and go at it. And yes, now we have this setup. Now what you do first is copy this line of code. So I'm just going to copy this much. So if I open up my terminal and open a new one, and now within this Mern folder, I'm going to paste this. So it will create a white project with a React template automatically. As you can see, we have dash dash template React. So I'm saying OK to proceed. We proceed. Fine. Now the next thing what we do is as you can see here, we have created my project. If you want a different name, what you do is inside this my project, you can just change the name to something different. So let's again reinstall it with the same command, but let's use a different name. So I'm going to use client instead of my project. So I'll say client and I'll hit enter. And now you will see client has been created, and I will simply delete this my project later on. I am not going to use it anymore. All right. So now what we do is we say cd client, and once we say that, as you can see, they have set it here as well, cd my project. After that, we just do this npm install dash d tailwind css post css auto prefixer and all this stuff. Just copy this and simply paste it here within the client directory. And if I hit enter, both those commands will run one after the other. As you can see, they're currently running in the client. And as this is working, let me delete this my project. So I deleted that. Cool enough. And now you can see this process is complete. And let's see the next thing. So now what we have to do is we need to configure your template pass. All right. So with this command, let's open config. You can see tailwind.config.js. If we go into that file and then come here, we just need to make these changes. Now, if I open this up, you can see there is something content, and now we need to add this content in here. Now this much is good, and it's fine. Now let's save this thing and then scroll down. And now you see add the tailwind directives to your CSS. Just copy this thing and then go to index.css. In the source, we would have that. So yeah, here. So yeah, this is it. If I remove this and paste it, it will be fine. But before doing this, what I want to do is I want to show you how the client is currently looking. So I will create a new terminal. So I'll just say cd client and I'll just say npm run dev to start the server. I hit enter. You will see it started. So if we come here and open localhost 5173, you will see this is up. Now this is how our previous template has used. So I'm just going to remove this index.css, hit save, and you will see it's different now. And we can just simply paste this stuff here. And if I save it, fine. And that is done, I guess. So now it is done. Now we just have to do npm run dev again, and we can use this Tailwind CSS stylings. All right. So that much part is done. What I'm going to do is I'm going to clear all this for now. So let's just do this much. Remove. I'm going to remove this use state as well. We are not going to use any app.css. So let's remove them as well. Now if I hit save, you will see this is empty now. And then in the app.css, I don't need this. So I'm just emptying its content. Fine. Rest everything is fine. So guys, now what we do is let's close this things. Now this is app.jsx. Currently we have nothing. Let's create a div in here. So let's make a div, and in this div, let's create an h1. Let's just try hello world for now. It's save, and you see we have hello world. Now to this, how to apply Tailwind CSS. So what you do is you say class name. Class name is equals to, if I say text 3xl, now it will increase the size. Now you see the size has been increased. If I say something like font bold and hit save. Now this is now what you used to do in CSS to style the same thing in CSS. You create a new file. Let's say let's give it an ID, and then I can tell you how to do it. So let's just say heading. I gave it an ID. We create something like this. Then we go to this index.css, and then we say hashtag this, and then here we say font weight bold, and then you say something like font size large or X large, something like this. That's how you get the same thing. Now, remember that this styling will always override this inline styling. So yeah, if I remove this, Control X and hit save, you will see the styling. What I will do is create another H1 and let's say hello world 2. And then for this guy, I will give that class name thing and hit save. Now you will see the stylings are different, right? So if I just say X large instead of X large, if we make it XX large, I think it should be larger. Yeah. Now you see, this is how work. This is how, what is the main difference between Tailwind CSS and this basic styling. So if I just remove this, you can do almost every styling with inline styling itself. You don't need to create anything else. If there are any animations, you just create them and assign them here. That's how it works. So yeah, this is getting a quite complex for you. So yeah, we will learn it more. But before we start, if you want to change like color, you can do something like text red 500. This will give you a red. So that is how simple Tailwind CSS is. And just imagine how faster your development could be if you can just write CSS right away in your JSX. Now, that's why Tailwind CSS is quite popular and beneficial as well. So now what we do is let's just remove this and start with our register application. So guys, first of all, in our to-do app, what we have multiple routes, right? One for like register, one for login, and one for home, something like that, right? So to turn our React application into a single page application, we need to download install a package known as React Router Down. It will help us build single page application. So what are we going to do is we come here and now let's just clear this. Now what we do is we do npm I React Router Down. Now this is something we are going to use for creating browser routes. All right. So if I hit enter, you will see it will eventually get installed. So yeah, it is now installed. So in here, what we do is we create Now, whenever you use a browser router, now in the app.js, this is the main file for the entry of React of everything, right? In the white.js as well as in basic create React app. So what we are going to do is in here we can't use div and h1s and all those things because we are going to create our router here. So we need something called as routes and router to create the basic things. Now what are that? Let me explain you. We will use something like an import statement. We want to import two things. One is routes. The another one is route from obviously React Router DOM, which we just installed. And the next thing is going to be if we say here we will create something, let's just do this. Inside these, we'll create this routes. We will have multiple routes within this. So now here we are going to say different routes. So if the path is, let's say, slash, we are going to have, let's say, slash register. We are going to have a register component. Here I will name it register. All right. Similarly, we are going to have a login component for slash login. This is what we are going to say. For path this, we want to show this particular element. For path this, we want to show this particular element. Now, these are going to be separate components. How that works, let me show you. So to create some things, to create these, let's create a folder called pages within the source directory. So I have created pages. Okay, my bad. Spelling this. Remove it. So within the source new folder, we'll say pages, and within this pages, let's create two components. One for register.jsx and another one for login.jsx. So here, right now, I'm not doing much. I'm just going to say div login. That's much. That is it. Here also, let's create a basic template. It's save. And now, cause we have them, we previous code will auto import it. So register and one for login. Now this much part is done. Now if you see, there is nothing in the basic slash path, right? Because we don't have anything path only slash. We have slash register slash login. So what are we going to do? If I go to, let's say, slash register, you will see, all right, there might be some error. See here, it gives me an error that we have to use this use routes may be used only in the context of a router component. But we haven't defined any router component, and that's exactly right because we need to define a router component which envelopes over this entire thing. So what I want to do is, if you have ever observed this file structure, if you go to main.jsx, you see this app.jsx is also included in here. So this is the main entry of your entire React application. So as if you see the index.html file, if I show you that, here it would be, yeah. All our React code goes into this div, right? So if you will see this main.jsx now, we are selecting that root div, and then within that we are rendering all our code. So right here I can create an envelope for my entire React application. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use something called as browser router from React Router DOM. So let's import it first. So let's import browser router from React Router DOM. I have imported it, and now I'm going to envelop it right here. So I'm going to say browser router, and then in here we'll say app and then browser router. If I hit save, now you can see for slash register I see register. If I remove this, I see nothing. You can see like no matched location for slash. If I say something like slash login, you'll see the login page. That is how it works. Now this is a basic setup. Now let's implement the register page, and then let's try if our backend is working fine with this thing. All right. So let's make this register first, and I'll close this tab because we don't need it anymore right now. So let's close this, close this, and this. Fine. Now let's just code the entire this, right? So in our register, we have to take user's email, user's name, user's password, right? So what we do is we create some use states to get them. So I'll use the use state snippets. So the first one, let's say we take an email. and initially it is going to be an empty string. Similarly, we are going to use state for name, and initially it is going to be empty. That is the same thing. Then again, we use a use state for password. So initially the password is going to be empty as well. Let's make this one capital as well. Now, cool. Now what I'm going to do is import this use state, and this much part is done. Now, now what we do is we create the basic form. All right. So let's remove this, and in here, what I want to do is we want to create a form which takes in data, right? So let's remove it. This action method, my bad. Let's remove this action method. So in here, what we do is we put in an h1, which will have, let's say, register. If we see it here, we see that much fine. After this register, I want to have an input tag. Now for this input, we want to take the value name. Type will be text. The value is going to be the name, and then we'll give it a placeholder. Let's say that we need to enter our name here. And then what we are going to say is we can give it something like the onChange function, which we generally give. So onChange e set name to e dot target dot value, same thing. And we will add one more parameter, which is called as required, which means if you submit the form without filling in anything in this input element, the form will not get submitted. That is what I mean to say. So now after this input, let's create two more inputs. So one for email, let's make it email, and then the placeholder will be email as well. And then here, let's make it set email, cool. And then here we'll have our password, and the type, I'll make it password so that it becomes a password field, type password. And then here we'll say password, and here we'll say set password. Now this much part is cool. If we see here, you'll see the name, the email, the password. Now if I had enter something, and enter something. All right. Now this much part is done. Now let's create a button as well to submit the form. So if we create a button and give it the type of like submit, this is the button which can submit the form. That is what it states. And then in here, I will say register. That is all. It's save, and right now if I click register, nothing happens because we haven't done anything. So what are we going to do is we have filled nothing. If I click on register, you'll see please fill out this field. That's what the required keyword does. All right. So this is the basic form. Now what we will do is let's after this form, what we need is we also need something. If the user is not registered, we want to take him to login page, right? So that is what we are going to do here. Let's do that later, but before that, let's style this particular form. So first of all, I would like to style this input element. So let's just say class name. Now within this, let's just say, let's give it a BG of transparent. This means that I want a background of transparent color. All right. And then outline none. Now guys, Tailwind CSS is pretty simple. You just need to remember some CSS properties, and these are generally this. Now, if you don't remember some property, but you remember it in CSS, let's say I want the background, right? So what you can do is come to the website of Tailwind CSS, click on this quick search and search that. Let's say background. So here I have background size, background repeat, background width. So let us say I want to the background position property. I click on it and I'll see all its. Now this is the CSS version. This is the Tailwind CSS version. You can just compare it here and paste this in your code. It will work fine. That is how you do Tailwind CSS in the beginning days, right? That is how it works. So coming to the styling after outline learn, if we save it right now, you won't see any much changes eventually. You can see it's the same. But if we make more changes, let's say something like placeholder. Now with this placeholder, I'm selecting the placeholder text. I'm saying it, make it text black. Now if we see, you'll see its text is black, but these are the default color, which is kind of gray. But for this one, I have made it black. After this, let's increase the size, font size. I'm going to say text XL and let's just give it like padding bottom to be 2 and then let's just say border of bottom of 2. I want to have it border only below it, not to the sides or top. And then let's give it a margin in top and bottom directions, in vertical directions of size 2. And if I hit save, you will see something like this. If I enter text, it's quite large than this, right? So now you see there is some difference. So now what I'm going to do is let's copy the same styling for all the three inputs. So let's just copy this, paste it here and paste it here. Now you will see we have all three similar to each other. Now let's just remove this. Fine. Now let's style this button. So in here, I'm also going to say class name, and within this class name, we will give our basic stylings. So let's give it a background color. So now if you have an hex code, not a direct color name, you can do something like this. I will say 00 and then BF63. Now this is some certain color which will give it a background. You can see it's a green. And now this is the background color which I gave. And then I can say text white, which will make the font color of that to be white. And then padding in X direction, the X axis to be 3 and padding in Y direction to be 2. And then I'm going to give it some border radius of let's say rounded medium. I'm going to give it a medium border index, border radius. You'll see it looks something like this. And then after this, I'm going to say margin top of 5 and then margin bottom of 10. Now this will create as a button. Now this much part is done. Now what we do is let's style this h1 and then we can also style the entire form itself to align each of these input tags, input elements and this button in a bed position using the flexbox. All right. But before that, let's style this headings, let's say class name and padding y of 10. In the y-axis, I'm going to give it 10. And then let's make its text size very big. Let's make it 5 XL. And then let's give it a font of extra bold. Now, guys, to get suggestions for Tailwind CSS stylings also, there is an extension if I'm right. So if I just say, see my extensions. Just give me a second. I'm just making sure which one. Yeah. Here you can download this Tailwind CSS Intelligence. You can just search it. It is from tailwindcss.com itself, which will suggest you your stylings like it is doing for mine. All right. So yeah, we gave font extra bold, and after font extra bold, let's just now if I hit save, now you see it's something like this. Now it's looking better, right? So let's do one thing. I want it in the center. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make the display to be flex and then I am going to make it flex column in column direction and then let's just say padding X to be 10. Now this is center. Now to make everything into the center properly aligned, let's convert this form into a flex box again. So what I'm going to say, I'm going to make it flex and I want everything to be in a flex column direction. And then let's just say justify to the center, which will take everything to the center like this. And then if we say item center, this will take everything to center horizontally as well. Now you can see. Cool. Now after this, let's give a height to the entire form. It will take the height of the entire screen, H screen. And then what we are going to say, we are going to give a width of full, right? And then let's make the text to be black for this entire thing. If anything, if I change the text color anywhere below, it will work fine. But generally by default, I'm giving it a black. And then let's say font to be semi bold. All right, this will give us this much. Now, as you can see, we have this fine and good. So now what we are going to do, try to control minus and make it 100%. It will look proper now. Now this is looking decent, right? So now what we have is we also need something to say if the already registered, give me a login button. So what I'm going to do is after this form, what I'm saying is let's create a break tag. This will give us some default spacing, and then I'm going to create a P, and in here I'll say already have an account, already have an account. And if that is the case, I want you to see a link which can take me to, let's say, the login page. So if I say tab slash login, we are getting something. Let's give it a class name of, let's say, text blue 500. Hit save. Okay, I can't see anything right here. All right, this went below. Okay, guys, I think I made a small mistake here. So what we are going to do is, okay, my bad. Let's remove this flex styling from here and give it to this div so that I see something like this. And then for this form, let's also give some styling. Let's give it, let's say, a background of white. Now, why we are going to, if I show you right now, everything is same. But in that application which I showed you in the before, the background of the entire website is slightly different, which we will change later on. And the background of this form is going to be white. So yeah, we are going to make it white. And then let's give it a box shadow of, let's say, 2xl. And if you see, we see some basic shadow right now, 2xl, and then padding y to be 3, and then let's give it a border radius of large size, and then let's make it also flex call so that I have in column wise direction those input elements, padding x10, and now you see it is looking fine and cool, right? So now it's looking decent. For this h1, let's make it padding x10. Now it's in the center as well. Now this is what I meant. Now if I click on login, you can see it is taking me to the login. But if you see closely, if I refresh this, yeah, if I click on login, just see here, the page is actually refreshing. It's not like working like a single page application, it is actually refreshing. So what are we going to do to fix this? Now, as we imported React Router DOM in the beginning, there is something else we need to to redirect it without refreshing. There is something we need to do again. All right. So we use something like a link. So I'll say import link from React Router DOM. So we import this link. Now what we do is, now if we come here, instead of a, we use this link tag. Instead of this a, I'm going to say link. Now if I hit save, and right now nothing will happen because in the link we can't use href. You will see nothing happening. To instead of href, we need to say to. So link to slash login, and we can do something like this slash login, and just everything rests the same. If I say, let's give it another spelling. Let's say underline. Yeah, cool. So now if you see, if I hit on this, it won't refresh, but it will still take me to the login page. As you can see, it is working decent now. All right. Just move it here and paste it here, and this is fine. So the next thing is now we need to create a function which can actually submit our data to the database, right? it can add data here. When I add in some data here and click on register, it can actually create a user in the database as well. How do we do that? So for that, we need to do something like connect that backend API and all this stuff. So let's create a function first, which can actually submit our data. So I'm going to use an arrow function here. So let's name it, let's say handle submit. And it is going to be an asynchronous function because we are making calls. We are making call to an API, right? So it is better to make it asynchronous. So now in this, what we are going to say, we are going to use a try catch block. Now in the catch block, we are simply going to say something like, let's just say log error dot message. Now this will give us the error in the console, in the browser console, all right. And here what we are going to do is, here we will simply say, uh, we are going to make the request to our backend. So what I'm going to say is, we are going to have some response, res, which will be an await request, which because we are waiting. So now, as I said, let's install Axios, which will help us do API fetching quickly, and it's like ease. It provides us with the ease of implementing using Axios. So yeah, it's not important. What I'm going to do, Axios, we also have to import it. So let's import it. Import Axios. So let us say Axios, from Axios, we imported it. So now in this function, we are going to do, so if you remember correctly, in here, it was a post request, right? So what we are going to do is, we are going to do axios.post, this because this is a post request. Now, what is the URL at which I have to make this post request? So if you see clearly, we have something as localhost 3001 user slash register. If I copy this and paste it in here, let's use this, and in here I pasted that. And after this, we have to create a JavaScript object of the details. Now this is the body which we are providing. Let's say name, we provide the name, and then we provide the email, and then we provide the password. As you see here, we provide the name, email, and the password. Now I'm directly giving this variable names because they are as same as these. I have not changed them, but you can also do something like this, name equivalent to name and that thing. But I'm not doing it because the variable names are exactly same, so it's not a problem. So now this is response. Now if you see, if we make our data, if the data is passed in correctly, you'll see we have success true. So I'm going to make a check in here right now. So what I will say is, if the response dot data dot success, if the response dot data is a success, if I get a success equals to true, what I want to say is, I want to say that user registered successfully. So for now, let's give an alert. Alert and alert, we can give this message. So we can say response dot data dot message. This is cool. If this is not the case, if we met with an else condition, if we met with an else condition, what are we going to do? We will simply say alert and error occurred. Like if we don't get a success, we might get some error as well, right? You can just give that error or just simply alert an error occurred, something like this. Now if I hit save, now this should work fine if I am right, this function. But where are we calling this function? Right now this function is not being called anywhere. So we want to call it when the form is submitted. So we'll say on submit, call this handle submit function. Right. Now, if I hit save, I think everything is properly set up. If I add a new name, let's add Itachi and give him a mail. Let's say itachi@gmail.com, and then password the same thing, 123456789, and click on register. You see the page refreshed. Why did that happen? And I don't know if my data actually worked or not. If I see here, I don't think anything happened. So if I try refreshing this page, let's see if Itachi was added here or not. Naruto Sasuke. So yeah, Itachi was not added. So something happened. The page refreshed as soon as I hit handle submit and nothing was actually submitted at all. So what we are going to do is we are going to say e dot prevent default. Now what this prevent default will do is that it will like tell our page don't refresh on default. I don't want it to refresh. Just let the function do itself. That's something what I mean. So if I refresh now, if I say again, let's add the same data, Itachi, and then Itachi at the rate gmail.com, and then let's give it the password, and then if I click on register, you see we get a course error. Now what is a course error? Now course error is generally based on like the backend is not allowing the frontend to make requests to it. Like I am a backend and I only give rights to certain frontend domains to make access to me. I'm not giving any access to you. Localhost 5173, I'm not giving any access to you. So first of all, we need to tell backend that yeah, localhost 573 is our domain itself, and you can let him make request to you. That is what I mean to say. So let's give access to localhost 5173 in our backend. So what we are going to do is let's go to our servers index.js again, and now let's implement the cost policy. So if I go here, let's open the server, go to index.js. Now what we need is we need to install another package first. So let's just come here. Let's just do cd server and then let's just do npm install course. Now this is the package name course, and now here what we do is we first import the course. So let's say course is equals to require course. Now what we do is we will say similar how we use router and this, we'll say app.use and then we'll say course. Now, if you directly pass in cost, it will like, it doesn't know, it will give the default operations. Now, within this cost function, we need to give our options like this is the origin, let the credentials be true, and give a list of, let's say, methods which it should accept. So, I'm going to say this. Now, it will accept the get request, the put, delete options, right? Get, post, put, and delete. So, I'm giving them all of those. And let's also give it a patch and the options. So yeah, let's make this localhost 5173 if I hit save now, and let's see the backend. So yeah, it refreshed. Now let's try this again. Click on register. So we see something like object. So something did happen here now. If we try refreshing this data, hopefully we see Itachi now. So as you can see, Itachi's data was added here. I didn't get any message, but Itachi's data was actually added. So I alert response, all right, my bad. So the data is written in this format. So I'll just say user created successfully response dot data dot message. If I hit save, let's try creating another user. So if I hit refresh, let's say this time let's say my name Ashish, and I'll say Ashish at the rate gmail.com, and then I'll say 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9. If I hit enter, user created successfully, and if I come here, refresh, you will see my data is created. My password is encrypted so no one can see, right? So currently all of the users have empty to-do list, like no one has any tasks because we haven't created any. So as you can see now we have created our very first API call from the front end to back end to store the user data. Now that is cool. This much part is cool, right? So now you know how to actually create a basic front-end API call to the backend and how the backend is implemented for the register route as well. So now this is some basic front-end, basic backend we did for one call itself. Now we need to make few more calls, one for login and then to-do calls like to create a new to-do, to edit the to a task and to delete the task. For all these, we need separate routes and separate methods to make the things happen, right? So now let's go to the backend again. And first of all, let's implement all the basic functions which we need. And then one by one, we can do implement all of them in the front end along with the login stuff and all, right? So I'm just going to close this front end for now. So let's go to the backend and eventually let's just get started by implementing the login function now. So in the backend, right now, what I want to do is let's go to the routers directory and let's just start with our login. So so now similar to this slash register, I'm going to create another one slash login and we'll say login. This will hit a login. So within the controllers, we are going to create another function called module.registers export.register. This was going to say login this time. That is all. Now in this login function, what we are going to do is most of the part is going to be same. We are not going to do much different. So let's just say something like try. So we are again going to use the try catch block. So for the try, what I'm going to do is in here, first of all, what will user pass when he is trying to log in? He'll take in an email, he'll take in a password, right? We get that data from the body as we did for this guy. Okay, we got name, email, password, right? So we got email and password this time. And now we are going to check user. So let's say, comment, let's say check user. Now here I'll say const user. I'm going to say await, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to find if the user exists. So user dot find one. I want to find the user first of all. So what is the parameter which with which I want to find? I want to find the user based on his email. That is it. Now here we'll say if the user doesn't exist, if it returns like something as null, what I'm going to say return a response dot status. You can say status 404 not found dot send. I'm going to say success is false and I'll say user not found, right? And after this if statement, but if the user exists, I'm going to say const, I'm going to say some variable match and see if actually the password he entered is matching his actual password or not. So for this, we are going to write in a function called as compare password. So right now, let's comment this for a second. All right. Let me just showing this some error. All right, we'll see the error later on. The error is this bracket. Fine. So what we are going to do is in the helper, auth helper, we have to create another function for comparing passwords, right? So if we just simply copy this and create another function for comparing password, let's say module.exports, and then here I'll say compare password. So this time we are going to use another function from bcrypt, which is, you can guess, bcrypt.compare. Simple. So I'll just say async. It takes in a password. It takes in a password and we pass in the hashed password. It tests what it is going to be. And as usual, we are going to create an arrow function. So I'll say it will return true or false. I'm going to use bcrypt.compare. I'll pass in this password and the hashed password itself, and it will just return me true or false. So in the user controller, we are saying const match await compare password. So now here we need to import this compare password here. We imported it. So compare password and the user dot hashed password. So we pass both of these in here. And once we do this, we'll get match is equals to either true or either false, right? So next we check if the match is true or not. If not of match, which means if the password didn't match, if the password is not the same, what we do is we again say return response dot status. This time the status was okay, so let's say I'm going to give response or status 200, and then I'll simply send what? I'll send in I'm going to say success is, let's say, false. Success is false, and I'm going to give him a message saying invalid password. That is it. But if the user actually matched, so I'm going to create a token. Now, how do you generate a token? We have to implement this right now. So what is a token first of all? So consider this website, or let's say any website. Let's go to Amazon.10. So this is here. Now currently I'm not signed in, but when I sign in, uh, the next time I open the website, again if I open Amazon.in, it knows that I'm signed in, right? That's the usual experience over all applications, all online web applications. Once I log in, the browser stores something through which it identifies that, yeah, this user was previously logged in, so I should show him that, yeah, he's logged in. There should be something for that. So what are tokens? Tokens generally store a keyword about you that, yeah, this is a token with which this user was logged in previously, and that if that token is removed from your, let's say you cleared the storage of your browser, then you will be logged out. That is how tokens work. So right now we are supposed to create a token. Now to create a token, we need to write another function. We need to use something else called as JWT or JSON Web Tokens. All right. So to create a token, we need a function for our user model to generate a token each time something like a user logs in. So for that, what can we do? So for this to work, what we do is we go into the user model, and here we create a function for the user schema. How do we create that? We say user schema dot methods, and we are going to create a method for this. We are going to say methods dot generate JWT. What will this do? This will generate a JWT for us, JSON Web Token for us. So I'm just going to say function. So this time we are not using arrow functions. We are just simply creating a basic function. Now before we go ahead, what I'm going to do is in the server, I'm going to install this npm I JSON Web Token. Hit enter and it will install itself. And yeah, pretty cool. Now in this function, what we need to do is, let's say we create a token. So what is going to be the token? The token is going to be JWT. Now before we do anything, we need to import that JWT. So what are we going to say? Is we'll say const JWT is equals to require JSON Web Token. Now we got that. And here what we are going to do is we are going to say JWT dot sign. Now this is a JWT function. Now within this sign, we are going to pass in, let's give it an underscore ID with which it will pass in the user. So ID is going to be this dot underscore ID. So as I said in MongoDB, every document has a particular underscore ID for itself. So this is the same thing. Now this keyword is used to actually access the ID of the current document. If you know of the basics of object-oriented programming, you would know that what this keyword stands for, right? So it's the same thing. So I'm going to say email, and I'm going to say this dot email again. So with this, we found what the data is actually. So yeah, now in here, what we are going to do is we need something called as a JWT secret. Now, what is JWT secret? Now, let me tell you. Now, whenever the user logs into an account, he or she has something like the backend server has something like a secret code. Now, let us say the secret code of my backend, which I am creating here using Node.js and expressjs. This server has some certain JWT secret. Let's say my name, Ashish Nalana. All right. Whenever someone copies my code, let's say my code is open source, someone copies it, but he doesn't know my JWT secret. If the JWT secret is different, my database will not accept that login. It will only accept when the JWT secret matches. I'm not going to share this JWT secret with anyone. All right. So whenever you make open source codes, you don't share some credentials with the public. So this is one of those credentials. Now, how do we use it? So in the .env, I'm going to create this JWT secret. So let us say in the .env file, I'm again going to say something like say JWT secret. Now this is going to be, I'm going to give it some random thing. My secret key, let's say. Generally, this is going to be very complex keyword which you gives randomly, but yeah, this is a basic application, so I'm not going to make sure that it is very that or something. So now back to our user schema. What we do here is we do process dot env dot jwt secret, which we just created, and after this we need to give it a timeline like expires in. Now it expires in 1 hour, like the user will be automatically logged out after 1 hour. That is what it says. I'm going to make it 7 days. So once the user log in, he can stay up to 7 days. Now once this JWT sign method is done, I want to return the token it generated for me. Now this token is some kind of a string which consists of numbers and all other stuff. If I hit save and .env.config is done, so we can use this process.env. So now remember, whenever you are using process.env, make sure .env.config is done, right? So now this user is done. Now we come back to this token generation, the login method. So what we do here is to generate our token. It's the simple thing. Now we use that method which we just created. So we are going to say const our token is equals to the user dot generate JWT. Now, if you see the user is this guy, we have created a schema method here itself. So now we can just say user dot generate JWT because the model knows that there is some method here. All right. So just generate JWT. Now we generated token for ourselves. Now what we do is we just say response.send. I'm going to give it, let's say, a status first. Let's give it a response.status of, let's say, 200. And after this, I'm going to send a response saying success is true. And then we have a message, user logged in successfully. And then we are going to pass in the user as well, user data, and then the token as well, which we can store in the front end in the local storage or something, right? So this is it now, but what if there was an error in the try catch block? So I haven't defined any catch block, that's why it's showing me an error. So in the catch will catch the error, and if there is an error, we'll simply say log that error. And let's send an error response as well. We're going to say status 500, send success false, internal server error, or let's say login error, and then we can just pass in the error as well. And now this is done. Now we have completed our login function as well. Now let's try login some account which we created, but before that let's go to user router and make sure we have created the login, right? And now if we go to index.js, we have done it. Okay. Now if we go to postman again and let's create a new one. Let's create a duplicate of it. Can we? Yes, we can. So in the register copy, what we are going to say is I'm going to make it login. I'm going to make it login, and it is a post request as well. Headers, the same thing, content type application JSON. body name email. We don't need name this time. We only need the email and the password. And if I hit send, you'll see we get some error. So it is saying that we got some error. So what is the error? Let me see. So yeah, if we go to the user router, I haven't imported the login function, right? So let's import it. Now if I hit save and try again, now you see success to message user login successfully. I got the user data and this is the generated token. This is how you log in, right? This is how the things work. Now this much part is clear. What is the next step? Now we have done the major functions for the user authentication, the user login, user register. Now if we want to implement, we will implement this later on when we are doing React again. But for now, let's complete the entire process of the server or backend first. Then we can do for the authentication stuff in the front end. This will keep the video clear and a little simpler to understand. So let's cover a basic overview of what we have done till now. So if I explain you that briefly, so see, this is our website. This is our entire website. Let us say we created a few blocks. We created the register function. We completed the register, the front end and back end both, and we implemented a login functionality. A login functionality. We within this login functionality, we generated something called as JWT or a token which with which user can log in. So this is the major stuff which we have done till now. Now, have you thought about something? Okay, how do I check if the token is valid or not? Like here, if you see properly in this model, we have given it 7 days. What after 7 days? How do I check if the token which I am passing through the front end to check if the user is valid or not is actually valid or not? So for that, we create a middleware something sort of thing. So to create a middleware, what we do is first of all, let's go to user router. Let's directly create a function here. So this time I'm going to say router dot, this time we need a get function. Now why does it get? Because this time I only want to read if the user is valid or not. That is all I want to know. So here I will say something like slash user auth. Slash user auth. Now this is also a similar thing. So we will say something called as request, comma response, right? And yeah, fine. Now here I'm going to say response dot status. Status I'm going to set it to 200 and success true. And then message user is authenticated. But how do I know if the user is not authenticated? You haven't done anything for that, Ashish. So how do we do that? So for that, we create something called as middleware. Now to create a middleware, let's create another function. Like let's write all these. So within the server, I will create a new folder called middleware. If I hit enter, and within this, let's create a middleware we are creating a middleware for our authentication. So I'm going to name it auth middleware, simple as that, .js. Now what does this middleware do? Now this middleware will actually get a token for it and it verifies if this token is valid and tells the if the token is not valid, it will stop the process in between. But if it is valid, it will proceed for the next step. What is the next step doing? The next step is like sending this response. That is it, right? So for this, what we do is simple. We get the JWT. So require JSON web token, fine. And the next thing we are going to .env config. So it's the same thing, const .env require .env, and then we do the config. So let's just do .env .config. And this much part is done. Now what we say is we create a function called user middleware, or you can also call it anything you want. So user middleware. This takes three parameters. Request comma response is something you know. The request which handles the incoming data, the response which sends the outgoing data, and another thing is next. Now, what does this next do? Now, this next is a parameter which tells whether to go to the next process, which is this thing, or not. So you will know about that in few seconds or minutes. So yeah. So first of all, let's see the token. So I get the JWT token. Now, what is this token? Now, this token will be sent from request v dot headers, And from the front end, we will be sending it via an authorization. So this authorization keyword within the header will contain the token. When we will be doing the front end, you will know. I will explain this thing again to be even more clear. Okay. So now just go with the flow. So this is try. We are again creating some try catch block. So I'm going to say const. We get a decoded value. We create some decoded value. We'll say something like JWT dot verify. Now this will verify our token. So what is the token? JWT token. Now we are verifying it with a JWT secret again. So process.env JWT secret. We got the decoded value. Now we are going to say if the if the decoded value dot email exists, if the email exists, what we are going to do is request dot email is equals to this decoded value dot email. Now we are adding data to the requests, and then we're saying request dot underscore id is equals to this decoded value dot underscore id, and then we'll say next. Go to the next method. What is the next method? It will come here. Now it will come to this thing. All right. But if this is not the case, if we don't have any decoded value, what we say is we say an else. In this else, we'll simply say response.json. We'll send a JSON request directly. We will say something like success. Success is false, like no success. And then we'll say message. Message will be something like you are not authorized to access this route. Simple. Or you are not authorized. This should be cool enough. And yeah, this is fine. So this is what we are doing in the try block. Now let's create a catch block. Let's say catch error. It will catch an error. Now in this catch block, what we are saying, first of all, let's log the error. So now note that we are only doing backend right now. We are not touching the front end right now. Okay. So keep that in mind. So I'm just going to say response.json and I'm going to send some data. Let's say success false. And then message is like invalid token. That is it. So now we are again going to say export this module dot export. We are going to export this user middleware. So now this user middleware is exported. Now we have implemented it completely. All right. Now this is user router. Okay. So guys, let me be clear with this. If you have any kinds of doubts, go through the comment section. Maybe more queries are there and your doubt got resolved. Or maybe if you have a doubt, go to ChatGPT. If it's still not resolved, drop your doubt in the comment. I will make sure that I reply to that comment. All right. So that is how you clear your doubts. Now, yeah, this much part is done. So what is the next step? We go to the user router and we pass in that middleware here. So we'll just say user middleware. So now you can see within the auth middleware.js, we created something called user middleware, right? So we are passing in this user middleware here. It's simple. Now, whenever someone makes a get request to this user auth, that get request will go through user middleware, and this user middleware will make sure that it has to go to the next step or not. If it goes to the next step, we'll send this response. If not, we'll send these errors. Simple thing. Now this is done. Now I guess we are done with all the major stuff. So guys, before we go to the next step, what I want to tell you is that whenever you are implementing login routes, something like this, always first try them and run them. Make sure you don't have any errors in this. Like I know I have stored this code somewhere, so I know that yeah, this is the right code. But yeah, whenever you are developing an application or writing your code yourself, make sure your routes are working correctly as you are coding them. Like I have completed this user auth route. I should test it first and then proceed for the next step. Because if there's an error, when I complete the application, it will be hard to debug these errors if you don't know them properly. So that is a general method which you should follow. But right now, why I'm doing this way, so that you can understand things a little simpler and easily. That's why I am first completing the backend before the front end, then we will go to the front end. Don't worry, I will explain these routes again when we will be doing the front end, so that you will get a completely clear understanding of these things. All right. So now what we do is let's go and build a model for our tasks or to-dos, you can say. So what we are going to do is within the models, I'll create another file called todo.js, todo.js. Now here also we'll do get the same thing. We'll get the schema and we'll get the model and we'll say require mongoose, and then what we are going to say is const to do schema is equals to schema. Now in the schema, what do we have? We need to have, now, as you know, if we can see the database once, each user has a to-dos in this array. All the to-dos will be stored, right? So what I'm going to do is each to-do will have a link to the user. So I'll say user. This is the link, okay? So the user is going to be, I'm giving him a type. Now this is the collection name. This is the collection name type. And then the type is going to be schema.types.object ID. Now this object ID is referring to this thing. This is the object ID, okay? Now we have this and we are referring to user. Now this is the model, right? If you can see here, user. So that is this thing. Now if we are done with this, what we are going to say is required true. Like this thing is definitely required by me. I need this thing if you want to process the to do, right? This much part is done. Now next each to do will have a title of for itself. We'll have a title which will be of some type string and it will be required true. Like I definitely need a title, right? And then we have a description, a basic description maybe. So I'm going to say description, and this description is not required, but I'm going to make it a type string. I don't need, it's not required. Like a task can have a description or cannot have, it's fine. And completed. Now this completed tells us whether it is completed or we have marked it as completed or not. So this is going to be a type of boolean, and by default it is going to be a value of false. And then we'll have created at, like we will store the time at which the task was like at which the task was like created. Yeah, that is it. So yeah, type is going to be, it is a date. So yeah, we'll store the date, and after this we will store the exact date. So by default we are going to give it, let's say date dot now. So date dot now will return the current date to MongoDB. All right. Now we can just export it. We'll say module dot exports is a dot to do is equals to, we are exporting this as a model. The name is to do and then to do schema. Now if we hit save, this much part is done. Now similar to the user controller where we defined functions for user, the login and register, we will create one, let's say to do controller, which will contain all the functions about the tasks or to dos. So let's just write all the functions first. So now again we import the to do. We import the to do from to do model, and similarly we import the user from the user model. Fine. Now first of all, let's create a function. Let's say we need a function to get all to dos. Function to get all to dos. So before we write function to get all to dos, we need a function for creating a to do. We need a function for creating a to do. We need a function to update a to do, or you can say to edit a to do, All right, let's say call it edit instead of update. So I'm going to say edit, and then we will need one for to delete a to do. Let's say function to delete a to do, and I think this is itself. Now you will be wondering where is the function to mark it as completed. Now we can do that in edit itself. How we will see later. All right. So first of all, let's write the function to create a to do. So here I'm going to say module dot exports dot create to do. Simple, it's an async function. So we'll say it takes a request, it takes a response, and in here what we say is simple. We get the title and description from the body again. So we are going to say const. We get the title, we get the description from request dot body. And now we'll say try. In this try catch, what we are going to say, we are going to say we define a to do. So we are going to create a new to do. Now in this to do, I am going to give a user. The user will be like I will have request dot underscore ID. Now this request, I'll pass in the user ID in this request, so it will contain the ID, and then we are going to give it the title, the description. This is fine. Now once this is done, I'm going to say await to do dot save, or you can also say dot save here, but yeah, both the things are same, so it's fine. All right. So after this, what we are going to say, we are going to say const user equals to await dot not dot. We're going to say user dot find by ID. We are going to find the user by his ID, and then we are going to push this to do into his to dos. All right. So we are adding the to dos to this array. That is what is happening. So what we are going to say is user dot to dos dot push this to do ID. I'm pushing it in. Whenever we are retrieving those to dos, we can get each of the to dos from their IDs. So after this, we are going to say await user dot save again. Now this is done. After all this process is done, what I'm going to say response dot status. Response dot status. Let us say 201. Okay. And then we're going to say send. And then the send. What we have is we'll say success true. Message is to do created successfully, and we are passing in the to do as well. But if we get an error, so creating a catch block, let's say error, we'll log that error, and then we'll say response dot status 500, and now 500 means internal server errors. So yeah, you can say that. You can say internal server error, or you can say something like something went wrong as well. Anything, it's your choice what you define. But yeah, it states that internal server error, and I can also pass in the error so that I can retrieve in the front end. So I think this is cool enough. It is telling me that there is some error. All right, I'm missing a bracket, that is all. Now it is fine. Okay, so we create the create to do function. Now let's write for the get to do's. Now to write a function, we can again say module dot exports dot get to do's is equals to async, the asynchronous function which takes in the request, the response, and then this. And after this, what we are going to say, we are going to say try. After this try, we are going to say const user equals to await. So we are going to find the user by his ID. So find by ID request.id. And what does this populate to do's does is it returns us this to do's array. It doesn't give us all this, it just gives us this to do's array. So yeah, it will populate the data based on these to do's. That's what it does. It will populate the entire data based on this to do's parameter. So it's not cost, it's const. Fine. So next what we do is we create a variable which can store the to-dos from the user. So let's say let to-dos is equals to user dot to-dos. So now we got them. Now what we are going to do is, so now what we are going to do is we'll say we need some function. Well, because like see, whenever we are showing to-dos or tasks, let us say, let us say we have a to-do. I want the to-dos which were recently added at the top, which were previously added at the bottom, right? I want them in a sorted order as per their date, not in any random order. So what I'm going to do is, now guys, let me be clear again. So this populate function, what does it do is that whenever we use this, the to-dos data will be also there. Like the, whenever you see here, I see here, okay, let me close these things, close these things, yeah. In this todo.js, a user has been passed as a reference, right? And in the user model as well, we are passing in here only the ID. Only the ID will be stored of the to-do, not the entire to-do. So when we do populate to-dos, we will get all the details about the to-dos as well, not only its ID. So that's why we use populate. I hope this is clear now. So we need a function to, let's say, so by the date at which the to-dos were created, right? So sort to-dos by the time they were created. This is what we need, right? So it's not dot, it's sort. Cool. So now what we are going to do is, let's say to-dos. Now in JavaScript, we can write a direct function to-dos dot sort, but we need a sorting function which can sort us based on the time they were created, which is the created at, right? So we take two parameters, a comma b, and in here what we do is we say if a dot completed, what I mean is, okay, let me show you. If a dot completed, so what I am doing here is, first I want the to-dos to be sorted, which were created latest, they should be on the top. But if they were like completed, marked as completed, I want to push them to the bottom. I don't want to see marked to-dos on the top, right? So I will give one condition for that. So I will say b dot completed. If the to-dos are like completed, I don't need them to be at the top. So I'll say return b dot created at minus a dot created at. But if they both are not in the same state, like both are neither complete, like both are in different states, then what we do, a dot completed, if we see one else return minus one. So this is what this function do. I already explained you, just go through it again. If the state is same, if the state is same, it doesn't matter. But if the state is not same, like one is marked as completed and one is not, give me the one which is completed. That is what this function is doing. Now for the next process, what we do is we just send in these to-dos. So I'm going to say response.status send. Now if I hit enter, now within the send, we are passing in the success to be true, message to do successfully, and we are passing in the to-dos as well. Now after this try, we definitely need a catch block. So in this catch block, okay, my bad spelling mistake, we will have an error. So for this error, what we are going to do is log our error, console log error, and after the error is logged, we'll say response.send 500, like server error, and then in here we'll say success false, message something went wrong, and then we'll pass in the error. So we have now created two functions, one for getting the to-dos and one for creating the to-dos. right? Now let's create some function for editing the to do. Now remember when we talked about these things, let me show you. When we talked about different requests, I told you about the put request as well. Put patch. So here what we are doing is we are going to use the put request. We are going to use the put request. Now what does put do? It replaces the entire data, right? So yeah, we are going to say module dot exports dot edit to do. This is going to be an async function as well. So we take request comma response. And once we have that, what we are going to do, we are going to have a try block, and this try block will get the to do ID first. So we are going to get, let's say, const. So to edit a to do, we need its to do ID, right? So to do ID will not be passed in the body. We will be passing the ID in the params, the parameter. Now, what are parameters exactly? Let me show you an example. So if I search for, let's say, Pokemon, hey, my bad spelling mistake, Pokemon, you can see here google.com, right? Slash search is a route. Now, after that search, we have a query. Now, this Q is a parameter here. This Q is a parameter and its value is Pokemon. These are some other parameters which Google uses in its search engine optimization and stuff like that, the users data and all that. But even if I copy this much and paste it again, you will see I'll get the same thing, Pokemon, right? So that is the main thing how Google operates. This is its route and this is the query Pokemon. So here we will pass in the to do ID something like Pokemon, and then what we do is we get the const, we get a new title, the updated description, the new description, and the completed state from body request.body. Okay, this much is cool. Now once we have this, let's find the to do now. So I'll say const to do is equals to do dot find by id. In this I will pass in the to do id. So we found the to do. Now if the to do doesn't exist, if the to do doesn't exist, what are we going to say? We'll simply say return, I mean spelling bad, return response. What we do, the status is going to be dot status 404 send success false to do not found. Simple. But if we got the to do, in case we got the to do, what we are going to say, uh, now we need to check like if the user is the owner of the to do or not. Now that is what I meant. So how do we do that? If the use now this can happen. Someone could get the to do ID, right? Like you can get a task to do ID, a random task to do ID, but you should not be able to update it because that's someone else's to do. I don't want my to dos to be updated by someone else. That is called hacking, right? So yeah, I need a better security. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say if to do dot user dot toString. Now this toString will convert the ID to toString. So if that is not equals to the request dot underscore dot ID dot toString, if both these IDs are not same, the user ID from the request and the user ID from the to do, if both of them are not same, we are going to say return response dot status. This time we know that it's the right request. I'm going to make 200 and then in send I am going to say something like success false and you are not authorized to edit this to do. I will simply say that. But if this is the current owner, if we don't find any error in this thing, what we are going to do is we are just simply going to update the to do. We will update the to do. So what we are going to say, let's say const updated to do. Let's say updated to do. This updated to do is going to be await. We will simply say something like to do dot find by id and update. And in this update function, first of all, we'll give in the to do id because we have used find by id. So first we provide in an id. So we found the to do now, and in here we'll pass in the new data. So we will say use the set query. Now what does this set query does is that this set query will set the following data into that. All right. So I'm going to say title, new title, description is going to be new description, and completed is going to be completed. All right. So whatever the completed state is. So once we do this, what we do next is after this object, we pass in another parameter called as new is equals to true. Now what this new true will do is it will simply provide us the updated to do. It will return us that. So after this process, what we do is we'll simply say response dot status 200 and then success true update to do updated successfully or edited successfully, something you can give, and we can pass in this updated to do as well. Once we have done this much, let's go to the catch block. We'll get the error and we just do this. We log the error and then we get the status success false, something went wrong, and then the error. This is fine. So I think we are good with this thing. So after this, we need this. So I missed some bracket or something. So yeah, here. Now if we see this, now it is all right. Okay, now we have done this function. Now we need a function to delete the to do. So same thing. We are going to use a delete request now, right? This will be a delete request. So we'll say module dot exports dot delete to do is an asynchronous function which takes request and response as parameters. So we're going to say try, and now within this try, what we are going to say const. Again, we will get the to do id from the parameters, and once we got that, we're going to say const to do is going to, we are going to find the to do. So we'll say await to do dot find by id, and then we'll pass in that to do id. Now once this is done, we'll check if the to do exists. If the to do doesn't exist, if we don't find any to do, we'll just simply say return response status 404 to do not found. But if it is found, we'll check if he is the user of the to do again. So what I'm going to do is copy this code again and paste it here. Again, we are doing the same thing. So yeah, this is it. Now once we have done this, now we'll actually delete the to do item. So delete the to do. So how will we delete? We'll simply say await to do dot find by id and delete. Find by id and delete, we'll pass in the to do id and it will delete it. Now what we are going to say is response dot status 200 okay, success is going to be true and to do deleted successfully. That is fine. So now once we have deleted it, what we are going to do is we are going to build a catch block which takes in an error, and once we have the error, we log the error, and success false, something went wrong. This is the same thing which we always do, and after this should be fine. Now we have completed all the functions the to do requires, and once we are done with this, we can go to our to do router. to actually create some routes. So let's get a file, let's say to do router.js, and then same thing. If I copy this, it's mostly the same part. So if I close these guys, to do controller, user router, if I paste this, we get the same thing. Now here we need some other functions. So I'm going to remove this. We don't need any middleware in here. We don't need this right now. We don't need this either. So what are we going to do? So we are going to say router dot first of all the get request, which will be for like let's say slash to do's. On slash to do's, whenever a get request is made, I want to like fetch all the to do's. So now remember, like before, because we have put in a check, like if you see the to do controller, we have a check that only the owner of the to do can update it. So for that we need a user middleware again. So yeah, we need the user middleware to check if the correct owner is doing the thing. If someone else does, reject it. So again, the same user middleware. So once we are done with that, we will call the get to do's function. Similarly, we will have the other four functions, one for get to do's, one for post to do's. Like for the same route, the get request and post request are two different routes, two different requests, I mean. So this is get to do's, we'll get the to do's, and here I will say create a to do. For slash to do's post request, I will create a to do. And for put here, I'll say slash to do's and slash I'll give a to do ID, to do ID. Now here, now guys, remember this. This is the function for, let's say this is a put request, right? Put request for the edit to do's function. So I'm going to say this. Now remember, if I open this and show you the edit to do function, in the request.params, we are getting to do ID, right? Now this is a variable name. Now here also it should be to do ID. If I change it to something else, it won't be able to import it. Here it is to do ID. That's why I can name it to do ID. To do ID. So these both things should be same. It's a must. All right. So now similarly, another request is the delete request. And in here we'll say slash to do's. Again, slash to do ID, the same thing, and the user middleware, and then we can just say delete to do. Now what I'm going to say is module.exports router, which is fine and good. So now the stuff is done. We can just now import this router in our index.js file. So in the index.js file, we need one for our this one a to do router as well. So I'm just pasting it. So I will say to do, and or let's just comment it. Let's just make it to do's, and then here I'll say to do router. All right. Yeah, the spelling is correct and fine. So yeah, we can just call this to do router, and it is fine. Let's just do one thing that instead of to do's, let's just make it only slash. So we can just say slash create slash to do slash to do slash to do ID. We can just do that. You don't need to add slash to do. That won't look nice. So I'll just keep it this way. All right. So with this, most of our backend is now done. So yeah, now let's get started with the client part. I'll just hide the server, close these files, and hide all of these, and then we can just start with our cool client. Okay. So coming to the client, let's go back to app.jsx in the source, and we need to do some changes. So as you can see, we have slash register for the register component and slash login for the login component. And what we do next is going to be simple. Now, suppose there is no user. and you directly land onto the page where the to-dos are listed, there won't be anything to show, right? So I need to make a check like when you can only reach the dashboard page when the user is logged in. Otherwise, he should be redirected to login page. So for that, I need to do something, right? So let's do that right now. So in here, I want to create a route. Route. All right. What will this contain? So let's close this tag. Now within this route, I want to say I want to have path. Path is going to be just only slash, and in the slash, I'm going to have an element. Now, what is this element going to be? Now, this element is going to be as something called as a private route. Now, what is this private route? Now, this component will only pass to the next component when the user is logged in. Now, how to implement that? I'm going to teach you, but just a little, just wait a little. So we are just going to say route, path, home, and that. If this is valid, if the private route sub like says okay, then for the same route, I want to show you the home component. That is what I meant to say. So to implement this right now, we don't have those components. So when I save it, I will get an error. So I'm just going to remove it for now. So cool, we are still here. So what I want to do next is create this private route. So if I go to the if to create a private route, what I will do is let's simply go to something like let's create a folder called components first, in which we will store all our components, which are not direct pages, but yeah, which have components. And before we proceed with the rest of the stuff, let's create an authentication layer like using the use context. Now in the React session, I taught you about use context, right? So to check if the user is logged in, we need to store something in the local storage to see if the user is logged in or not, if he is the right user again and again. We need that information, right? And respectively, let's say in all the pages. So what I am going to do is let's set up a context for our application. So I'm going to say I'm going to create a folder called context as well. After this context, we can work on the private route because private route is going to need the context. That is why. Now within this context, we will create a file called auth.jsx. So I will name it auth.jsx. Now if I do this, now we are going to implement it. All right. So here what we are going to do is let's say first of all I want to import a few things. So one of them includes the use state hook, and then I will be needing the use effect hook, and then we'll use the use context hook to create the context, and then obviously the create context. All right, these are the things which we will need. And then along with this, we'll import Axios because we need to make the security check, the use auth route, remember that thing for that thing. And then, yeah, now let's create a auth provider. So let's say const, we'll say auth provider. The auth provider, this will contain the children. The children means all the components within this auth provider, like the components to which this auth provider encapsulates. All right. So within this, we will use a use state. So the use state will contain something like auth, and it will it will have a function set auth, which will be used to change the state. Then we will simply have the use state. And in this use state, what we are going to have is an object which contains the user data. So initially, the user will be null. Like null means we don't have any user. That is what it means. And along with the user, we will have a token. So right now, initially, we don't have a token. So we are going to say an empty string. All right. And then after token, we have a count. And yeah, we can just set it to 0. All right. So the next thing what we do is after this use state, now this much part is done for the use state. Now what we do, we set some basic, let's say authorization. Let's set the token. Now you can call it like giving a default configuration to Axios. Default Axios config. You can say something like this. So what we are doing is we are saying Axios dot defaults dot headers. Now we are setting some headers. Now remember in the server when we made a call to, like, let's say if we go to the to user router, maybe here in the user middleware as well, we need the data about the user, right? From where does that user came? It doesn't came from the body, it came from the headers authorization, right? So that's what we are setting here. So we'll do common, and in this common, okay, it will be a square brackets, and we'll do authorization. And here we can do it something like this. We'll say auth. If the auth exists, then get its token. Now, what does this question mark exist says? This question mark says that if auth exists, give it token. Otherwise, return none or null, something like that. Okay. Now we have set up the authorization for it. Now we will create a use effect snippet, and in this use effect, it will be default. And in this use effect code, what we are going to say, we are going to get the data from the local storage first. So const data is equals to local storage dot get item. We are going to get the auth from the local storage. Now, if there is some data, if there is some data in the local storage, what we are going to say is const parse data. So we'll have parse data. This parse data will be equals to JSON dot parse the data in the local storage. This is what we are doing. And then we set this data to, let's say, set auth. Now what in the set auth, what we are doing is we have the dot dot triple dot auth. Now what this will do is get the previous authentication data, which was previously stored in here, which is user null token this and that. So instead of this, what we are doing is the new data is going to be user, and we'll say parse data dot user. And for the token, we are going to say parse data dot token. And coming to the count, it will be simply 0. All right. So here what we are doing, if the user was logged in somehow previously, if I found some data in the local storage, get the data, parse it and set it and change the auth. Now once this use effect is done, what we are doing is what we are returning is what this main component mainly returning is. Okay, not like this. We need circular braces. So in here, what we'll do is we'll provide this auth context. We need an auth context. Now, this auth context is not directly there, so we'll need to create it. So before this auth provider, let's create the auth context, which the with the create context, and then here let's create a provider for this. So provider, the value will be the auth and the set auth function as we did previously. So we are going to do value is equals to let's say auth and set auth, and then after this, we will have our auth context dot provider. We close this as well. All right. We just need to remove this. And inside this, we pass in the children. Cool. Now it does show me some kind of error. I don't know what it is. No corresponding closing tag. Okay, this is a closing tag. No, it's fine. Now for this use auth, we need a certain, let's say you can call something like a custom hook. So we need a custom hook. Now what this custom hook is that I want to create this hook so that I can make changes to this use auth. Okay. So I will simply say const use auth is equivalent to, it is equivalent to our use context. We want to use the context of this auth context which we just created. And then after this custom hook, what we are going to say, we will just simply export our use auth and auth provider, which we can use in other components. All right, now if I hit save, the auth.jsx setup is done. Now, once we have done this, we can now move on to our, you can say, the next step. All right. Now, what I want to do is within this components folder, let's create one folder for authentication components as well. So I don't want to mix the components which I'm going to use for authentication with other components. So I will create a separate folder for authentication components. Now in this auth, I will create a new file, two files. Let's say private.jsx. This is a private component. And within this, what we are going to say is we will be needing some stuff again. So let's just import them first. So we'll say import the same thing, the use effect snippet and the use state snippets. These are the two things we need from React. And then we will import our use auth, the context which we just created. So we'll say import. I'm going to say use auth from dot slash context slash auth. And then we will import something called as an you can say outlet from React Router DOM, which acts like an outlet to like pass in to the next state if the data is correct, something like that. You can say import, and here let's say outlet. So we got the outlet. Now after this outlet, what we'll do is we'll import Axios again. So let's say Axios from Axios. Now after Axios, what will we need? We'll need nothing else. But now this is okay. So what we are going to say is export. We're going to say export, and then we need a default function. Now, if we say export default function, it will be the default function which will be exporting. We don't need to write modular exports or anything else. So we can simply write this private route. Now, for this private route, what are we going to say? We are going to say use a use state snippet. Now, in this, we will have something like an OK, and then we can just in the initial place we'll have like false. If it's okay, we'll set it to true, and let's make it capital. Cool. This much part is done. Now one we will use the use auth hook as well, which is our custom hook. So here what we'll say is const. We will have our auth and our use auth, set auth function, and this will be equivalent to the use auth which we imported. And cool. Now after this, we'll use the use effect hook to check. So let me use a snippet directly, and here we just need each time the token of the site, if the token of the authentication changes, refresh this. Check again if this is the correct user or not. So that is what I'm saying. Each time the author token changes, do something, refresh the data, like get the new data. You can say something like that. So now what I'm going to do is create a function called const auth check. Now this will check if the authentication is correct or not. So this is going to be an async function usually because we are involving API calls. So now in here, what we are going to say const response is equals to await axios dot get. Now in this get request, we will pass in our API URL, you can say. Now guys, before we do this, I want to teach you something else as well. To like actually for open source applications, you don't provide your backend URLs as well. So it is something you should keep a little private. So what we do is in the source folder, you can also do it in the source folder, or we can say it something like you can, yeah, in the source folder itself, you should create something called as a env file. So let's do it in this client itself. So yeah, so we'll say .env file here as well. Now in this env, we'll say server URI maybe. So yeah, let's name it simply, let's say API. Now this API will be equals to our background URL. So I'm just going to copy this. And once I copy this much, I'll just paste it here and I'll save it. Now in the private.jsx, instead of doing like entering the entire URL here, what I will do is I'll use format strings. So I'll use backticks and then the dollar sign. Within this, we will simply say, now because we are using white JS, so here we have something different. So instead of dot directly API, you can't use the environment variables like this, you have to use white and then underscore. Now make sure this white is in caps lock, so everything capital. This is how you define environment variables in white.js. Now if I hit save, this should be fine. So here we do import dot meta dot env and then dot white API, you can say. Now we got this import dot meta dot env dot white API. Now after this what we do is we say slash user auth. All right, it has to be lowercase. So slash user auth. Now this much part is done. Now once we make the request to this, we got a response. Now we'll say if the response dot data dot, if it is okay, if the response dot data dot is okay, set okay to true. But if it is not, we are going to say set okay to false. And then we will say some error. Alert response dot data dot message. Now we have done some basic stuff, and after this function, we need to call it as well, right? We haven't called it, right? So we'll say if auth exists and we get its token, if its token exists, we will simply call the auth check function. That's it. Now, after this much part is done, what we are going to do is after this use effect, we need to have a return, right? So we'll say return. So if okay is true, if it is okay, return the outlet, like go for the next step. But if it is not, show me something like a loader. I want to show a loader, like it is loading, it is searching for the user. So let's create a component for that as well. So I'll call it spinner for now, and let's make the spinner component. So in this auth, let's create something called as spinner.jsx. Now in the spinner.jsx, it's just a simple loader. So we'll just say RFCE, we created the spinner. So now in here, I'll create something like a use state to create a counter. All right. So let's say use state snippet. So this will be count, and initial value is going to be 4. Like we are going to create a counter. That is all. So let's make it t. Cool. Now after this, we need to use the navigate function from React Router DOM. So I'll say const. Now this navigate function is used to navigate to different routes without using the link tag. All right. So that is why we use this use navigate hook. And then we again use the use effect snippet, and I forgot to import this use state. Cool. Now if we remove this and this use effect, and coming to this use effect, this should reload each time the count is changed and each time we call if the navigate is changed. So in this use effect, what we do is we create an interval. We say const interval is equals to set interval. Now this is a JavaScript function again, which you can assume it like which creates a function call run over a certain interval of time which you can provide. So I'm going to say set count is going to be, we take its previous value, and after we take its previous value, we'll just decrement it. So we'll say minus minus previous value. This should be fine enough. And yeah, we are decrementing it, and decrement it for what? Like every 1 second I want to decrement it, like every 1000 milliseconds. Now this is the milliseconds. All right. So after this, what we do, if the count double equals to 0, if it is 0, then and only then navigate to slash login, which means navigate to slash login means if the count becomes 0, then simply navigate to slash login. If nothing happens, simply we're just going to do return clear interval. We'll be simply clearing the interval. So clear interval, and then we pass in that variable, which will simply clear the interval from here. Now what we are going to do next is in this written in the JSX part, we will use the basic things. Now you will use this when you don't have a div tag. If you are using div tag, you can just simply remove this. All right. So let's just remove it for now. In this div, let's create a P, and in this P we'll give in some text like login or register. And then we can say something like another P, let's give it, let's say to start using the to do app, to start using the to do app. And after this, what we will say, let's give it an H1. In this H1, we'll say login or register to start using to do app. Then we can say something like redirecting in this seconds. Now, this I will put it inside a strong element. Now, this strong will convert this text to bold. So yeah, this must be fine. Now we can just provide in some stylings. So let's just save it for now. Save it till here. And let's go to the private route. We can apply the stylings later on. Let's go to the private route. This is the spinner. Let's import it. Fine. If we hit save, this is fine. Now the next job is if we go to our app.jsx, here we can just do this. Let's create a home component for now. Pages. If we go here, let's say home.jsx, and if we say rfce, this is the home, just the basic home for now. So this is the home. We can uncomment this private route. Let's import it, and then the home. Let's import it. This much is done. So if I remove this, so right now we see some error in private.jsx in line 9. So we see some error in here. All right. So guys, the error is because of this. Instead of here in auth.jsx in the context folder, here instead of this curly braces, we need square braces. So yeah, if we hit save, and now it should be fine. Now it's saying use effect is not defined in the spinner. So if we go to spinner, let's get this. And you can see this spinner login register to start using, and we are redirected to login page. So, but before this, in the main.jsx, we need to do something this. We need to wrap the auth provider over the entire application. So if we don't do this, we will see error. See, we will see this error. User is not a function or its return value is not iterable. So to get rid of this, we should import auth provider in the main.jsx as well. That's when it will work. All right, you have to wrap your entire browser router in the auth provider. Now if we hit save, now this much part is done. You can see now login register to start using the to do app. Now once the timer is done, we redirect to the login page. Now let's just quickly style our spinner, and then we can move on to the next stuff. So to style the spinner, let's just come here. It's just some basic styling. So for the div, let's give it a class name. Let's say h screen, and the width, let's give it a screen, and then let's just make it flex, and then let's just make it something like justify center, and then item center, and then we can just simply give flex call because I want everything to be in column wise direction. And for this p tag, let's give make it something like text 3xl, bigger text, and then let's make the font to be bold, and then let's get a margin bottom of, let's say, 1 to something like that, small margin bottom. And once we are done this, to start using the to do app, we will see we don't need any setting, I guess. So we'll in this h1 redirecting, what we're going to make, we are going to make its text too small, and then margin top to 3. Now, if I hit save, you should see the styling to be proper. Right, enter, you see login register to start using. It's in the center, which is decently nice. So now that part is done. Now let's go to the login component and just style the login component now. First of all, let's close all of these. So once we are done with this login component and all, so let's go to login.jsx and in here make the changes we need. So first of all, before proceeding with this, we need to make some minor changes. Like we are using in this application, we are going to use something called as a React Toastify. So if I show you their website, React Toastify, it's like a package for notifications. If you see this, we have something like this. So we can see notifications something like this if we use React Toastify. So to use it, we are going to use this package. You can go to their installation and use this. And these are their example. This is the example, I guess. It's running. So you can just check this website later on. But for now, we are just going to use this React Toastify. How to use it, I'm going to tell you. It's not much. It is very simple. So let's just implement that real quick in RBS code. So first, instead of login, let's complete the implementation in other files. So if we go to let's say, let's go to app.jsx. In app.jsx, we need to, like similar to other wrappers, this also works something like a wrapper, the React Toastify. So first of all, let's just quickly install it in our client. So here, let's come. Okay, cool. CLS, let's just do npm I, and then we can say React Toastify. I'm typing router. So let's just say Toastify. This is the spelling. So yeah, if I hit enter, it will install itself. Now, if we come here, just give me a second, React Toastify. Now, along with this, in the installation, we also need to import something, the style sheet of this. So just type this in. So first of all, let's import the toast container. So I'll say import, and then we are going to import the toast container from React Toastify. Once you import that, we need a style sheet as well. You can see this one. Import React Toastify slash this slash React Toastify.css. Just type it as it is, or you can find it in the documentation as well. I should see it somewhere here. So just give me a second. Mhm. So if you go to examples, maybe. All right. If we go here, you see these kind of notifications they give us like this. All right, I can't find it right now. I will, if I find anything, I will link it in description. But for now, I want you to just simply copy paste this thing. All right, this thing. Okay, I'll just start a comment here. Let's copy paste this line. Cool. After this, what we do is in here, what we can simply do is ins and envelop this entire routes, or you can also say it like, we don't need to envelop it actually. We can just simply say toast container and then slash. Just define it before everything else. This will also do the job. So if I hit save, now we can use this toast container anywhere. For example, let us go to the register.jsx. Okay, instead of this alert messages, I will give you something like something similar. All right. So instead of this alert messages, we can give a toastify message. So for that, what we are going to do is we are first of all supposed to import that toastify, import a toast. So I'll say import toast from React Toastify. And here, what we say is mm, response data dot success, right? So once we get data dot success, instead of an alert, we can do something like this. We can say toast dot success and then response to data dot message. If I show you an example of this, we come here, hit refresh, login, register. Let's create a new name. Let's say Asta. Now Asta is a character from Black Clover. It's also an anime. And then this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Cool. If I click on register, you'll see user created successfully. This notification thing is what React Toastify does. So that does our job simpler. Like we don't need to create our own notification styling and all. React Toastify package provides us the default styling, which is pretty cool in itself. Now, before we go ahead, there are some changes which you actually need to do in register. Like once the user register, I want to directly set the authentication, not I simply want like if the user is registered now, automatically log in him with the same credentials, right? So yeah, so what we're going to say is just for toast.success this, and if it's a success, what we are going to do is we'll set the authentication as well. Now remember, we can just set the auth. First of all, we need to import it, I guess. Yes, obviously we need to import it. So in here, we will also get the navigate from React router doc. So let's say use navigate. Let's import it. It's automatically imported. Cool. And then we'll say const auth, comma, set auth is equals to the use auth from the context API. Now this is done. In here, well, what we will do is we'll say set auth. In set auth, what we'll say the previous state auth. And instead of the previous state, what we are updating it, we'll saying the user is equals to response.data.user. Remember, we were returning the user as well in the backend. So this is what this is where we are using it. And then we'll say response.data.token. Simple. We get this. Now, once we set the auth, what we are going to say is simply we are going to set that into the local storage. So local storage dot set item, we will set the auth as JSON dot stringify. In this stringify, we'll pass in this response dot data. We'll give the entire data as stringify. All right. Once we are done with this, we'll navigate back to slash login. All right. If we meet an error instead of an alert, I would like to say toast dot error. Now for success, it will give green. For error, it will give red boxes. All right. Here we can do response.data.message. And instead of console log in here, in catch as well, we can say toast.error and then error.message. We can get toast.error. We can get something like, or we can just simply say here, okay, let's just leave it to error.message. This should be decently fine. And now, yeah, we don't have any errors. So if we find in some user, let's say Itachi is already there. So I'll say Itachi at the rate gmail.com and let's give the password. If we hit register, nothing happens. The user is not being registered because of you can say something. Okay, let me just check. We should get an error, at least this, because it's not a success. Let's try logging it in. Log error occurred. So let me see if there is an error in here. No error. We should see if it is working at least fine. So let's say Itachi2 and then Itachi2 at the rate gmail.com. If I click on register, you see user registered successfully. I can log in. Okay, this much part is working cool. But if the user already exists, I am just not able to see his data. That is what is happening. So if we go to the server once and check out how that function is operating, I think we can do some stuff. If it's an existing user, success false, and we are returning this message, right? Okay, success is false, which means uh, response.data.success is false. So we should see this success dot. Okay, that's the thing. Here we have response.send. Now if I hit save, user already exists. Now you can see the errors. User already exists. This is the error which we should get, and now we are getting it. This thing. That was the error which we were previously not getting. So now it is fine. So now we are done with the register. Now similar to what we did previously, we can also do the same thing here. We can remove this. We can put this in backticks and then paste it in here and then use the dollar symbol to import the URL from the .env file. So what we are simply saying is import .meta.env dot caps lock white underscore API. Now this should be cool. Now that's it. Now the register function is complete and we are good to go for the next step. Now after register, we will go to login as usual. So in the login also, we will have something similar, right? So what I'm going to use is a useState hook. My bad. UseState snippet. And in here we will have an email set email, and initially it is going to be empty. And then similarly, we are going to have a password. And instead of set email, we will have set password. That's it. After this, we will also need the auth. So we'll simply say const auth comma set auth is equals to use auth. Okay, it's not auto importing. So let's just import it ourselves. Import use auth from context API, and then we also need Axios. So import Axios from Axios, and once you do this much, we also need the navigate function. So const navigate is equals to use navigate. This use navigate is from React router. So yeah, we need to import it again because of like if you open up too many applications like this and using the computer for the long time, VS Code cannot suggest very quickly. So yeah, you have to sometimes do that, and it's pain. Yeah. So we are done with this much job, and the next thing is going to be a form function. But before making the form function, let's create the basic form first, right? So similar to the basic register styling, we are going to copy similar styling. So let's just get this dev. I guess this will be almost similar. So instead of this, we can just paste that dev, and after that, we can do slash dev. Hit save. And now inside of this div, we will create a form. All right, I see some error here. They are telling me that there is some error. I don't know where that might be. So if we come here, go to problems. All right, the file is in the program because this. Alright, here it is telling me there is some issue in here. So let's just import it back again. Hit save, and that should be fine. Now in here, let's copy this form and the register function as well, register heading as well. So yeah, form, and after this, we'll just say slash form. And instead of register, we will have login, hit save. And for now, let's comment this line. And if I come here, slash login, we see it. Now this much part is done. Now what do we do next is we need two input elements. We need two input elements, that is all. So to add those input elements, we can just simply create a div. And inside this, in the register function, we have the email and password. Let's get them back again, and the button as well. Copy this inside this div. Let's paste them. And if you see, we have them like this, right? So now what we do is, things are quite fine. So this looks something like this now. And to bring them in here, let's just remove this div from here. And let's paste it here so that they are aligned properly. And for this input as well, I will put it inside another div. So let's say div paste, and if I hit save, it's formatted. Now you can see it is pretty decent. Now, similar to that, we instead of this register, we will have login. That's it. And after this form tag, we will have a break tag. And if I can just copy it from here, this P, I can copy it and just paste it here. Instead of slash login, we'll go to slash register. And here we can type in like don't have an account. Don't have an account, go to the register page. We'll say register. If we hit save, okay, some error, link is not defined. Okay, we have to import it. Link imported. Now we see it. If we go to register, we can go to login without refreshing. Now this is set. Now let's write the handle submit function. All right, similar to the one we did in the register, like this. All right. So what we are going to do is here write a function. Let's say const handle submit. This should be fine, and then async. Now, guys, I know this video is getting quite long because it's a full stack project, and full stack projects take some time. So yeah, we have to go through it when we are learning. So we are just going to say prevent default, and then once we do this, what are we going to do next is simple, the try block. And inside this try block, what we are going to say is we are going to get a response. So count response is equals to await and then axios dot, this is the post request, axios dot post, then backticks, and we'll just say dollar sign, and then this import dot meta dot env dot white API as usual, and then slash user slash login. And then here what we are going to do is we are going to pass in the email and the password in the body. Now once we pass that, what is the next step we do? Oh, this part is done. Now in the next step, what we do is we'll check if we got the response. If we got the response and response dot data is a success, if it is a success, my spelling mistake. If it's a success, we'll send in a message. Post dot success response data dot message, and then we will set the auth. Now in here we will set auth user is equals to response data dot user, token is equals to response data dot token. The same thing. And then after the set auth, we will set the local storage dot set item auth json dot stringify response dot data. The same thing. and then we'll navigate to the dashboard. So the dashboard is the home page, so which is at slash. That's it. Now, if statement doesn't work, we'll go to the else and we'll say toast dot error, and in this error we'll say response data dot message. And if this doesn't work, we will go to the catch block. The catch will catch an error, and we'll say toast dot error error dot message. And let's also log the error for our safety. That's it. Now we are good to go for the login page as well. Now let's try logging in. All right. Let's try logging in some account. So this is login. What I'm going to say is I had an account with my name ashish@gmail.com, right? And I remember my password. Okay, set password is not defined, my bad. In here we need to change them. Set email, password, set here. It is defined. Alright, spelling mistake. Now it should be fine. And here we need to call the handle submit. Okay, cool. Anything else? Are we missing anything else? So no, everything else is fine. So email, let's refresh this page. Try typing in. Cool. We'll say ashish@gmail.com and then we will say password. So we got an invalid password. My bad. Let's try with another account. So guys, I think I mistyped the password previously. So right now, let me just clear the console for now. I tried it with another account, it worked. So yeah, let me just clear the local storage once. And now if we go to the application and see, nothing is here. So once I'll do like, well, let's do with naruto@gmail.com. And if we do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then hit login, you'll see, we'll see some error, user logged in successfully. You'll see this. User login successfully true, and we got the token and the user data as well. Now that is cool, right? So now what we can do, even if we refresh the page, you can see this data is still here. So that much part is cool enough. So here, once I log in, I was seeing some alert. So I need to remove that alert. Where is that alert? I don't know. So I think it's in here. Like if we go to the context here or in the private.jsx, I guess. Yeah, here it is. Response.shader.message. So we can just remove that and it should be fine. Now, in place of this, what we can put in is something like, let's give in an error. Like this is set okay to be false, right? So we can do something like toast. Imported the toast as well. Toast.error is equals to response.data.message. Now, if we have an error, it will do this. Okay. So initially it is saying that we are having an error. That means, so let's try again. Let's see what it says. Naruto@gmail.com. And then I'm entering the password. We see login. You'll see invalid token. It is saying that we are getting an invalid token. So if I go to the dashboard again, it is not able to match the token correctly. I think we should land to the default home screen, this one, but we are not. So there is some mistake, and let me just check it out. So guys, as you saw, we were getting the error of invalid token, right? So if we see the backend in the auth middleware, it is error which is coming here, which says catch error, right? So this is where invalid token is coming from. So I see this is authorization, and I remember, if I'm right, we should go to the client and here, I guess, yeah, instead of this capital A, let's make it smaller. And if it's saved, I think this should work this time. So again, invalid token. Let's try it again. Let's try it once more. So I'll just say nato@gmail.com and user is logging in, but I'm getting invalid token again and again and again. So I need to check the error again. So guys, I found the error. So the error was in like in the author email. Instead of headers, I had written previously header. So it's headers. Remember, it's headers. And coming to user router, if I do this again, I'm getting another error because see in private.jsx we are saying response.data.ok, but in user router there I'm not writing any okay. So I'm going to make it like okay is equals to true, and then do this. And now this should work. Now if I hit save and try it again, and you see now we see the home, right? Now for this, now see, debugging is quite simple. You just need to know the concepts and how things work. So I didn't do any ChatGPT or Google to find this debug. I was just going through my error messages and where did I write code for that error. That is all I did. And it took me like hardly 5 minutes to do that. And yeah, that is how it works. All right. So now with this, we have set up. Now this is like fine. Now this is working. Now we need to play with the home, the to-dos, and those routes to actually set up the to-do things, to-do calls, and all that, right? So let's close all this for now. So yeah. So guys, I was just wanted to tell you that if there are any errors, don't panic out, right? You can just read out the errors and you can just figure out from where there might could be think. If thinking does most of the job. If it still doesn't work, you're still worried, just go to ChatGPT, paste in your error, see. So yeah, that is how. Now to trace back an error, what you simply do is you see the error message. There is given like in which file the error is, in which line the error is. Trace back right from there. That's how you do debugging, which works like almost every time. It works for me, so it will do for you as well. Simple as that. So now let's go to home.jsx and start writing code for this. So what I'm going to do is, first of all, in this home function, we are going to have some use states. So the first use state will be for to-dos, right? So yeah, let's use a use state snippet, which is an array. Like it will store the all the to-dos which we have. So here I'll make something like to-dos, and here I'll make something like set to-dos, right? Cool. And again, the same thing, the auth we will have. So yeah, I'm saving it till here, and then let's just say const auth comma set auth. This is equivalent to use auth. Cool. Now we have to import it as well. Again, I'm not getting a suggestion, so I'm going to the register. I'm just going to copy. All right, this is fine. Now the next thing is we need something like a loading state. Like if the to-dos are still loading, we need to show something like it's loading or something, right? So for that, so we'll use another use state snippet, and in here we'll say loadings. And if it's and after that, what we are going to say here, initially the loading is going to be true. If the data loads, we'll set it to false. Let's make it capital L, right? Now here, let's define a function which can fetch us to-dos, right? The get request, right? So what we are going to say is const fetch to-dos. This is going to be an asynchronous arrow function. And then here what we are going to do is again the try block. In this we'll have the response. Okay, I forgot to make it const response, and then we await for Axios. We import Axios, and then we say dot get, and then we say write API slash to do's. And then in here, what we are going to say is we are going to pass in our headers, which will pass in our user data. So in here, what we will do, remember authorization, right? So we are going to say authorization. Oh, my bad, spelling mistake. Instead of this bearer thing, we just need to pass this auth.token. That should be fine for us. So let's just remove this and this as well because we only need to pass auth.token. And we have passed in our headers as well. Now, once we are done with this, what we are going to do is we'll say if response.data.success, we'll say set to-dos to response to data dot to-dos. We get the to-dos from the data and we set it in this use state. All right. And then we'll say set loading to false because the data is loaded for now, right? And if this is not the case, we'll say toast.error, toast.error, and what the error is, response to data.message. If we get some kind of, use the if, all right, toast.error, fine. All right, I'm missing something. So if I go to this bucket, all right, we need to get that here, and now it's fine. Cool. So now after this strike block, we need a catch block as well. So catch error toast.error error.message, that is it. After this catch block, we need to close the function as well. And I think we are good to go. Now the fetch to-dos function is fine. Now we call this fetch function. Now guess what? We are going to call it the use effect because we want the data to be loaded each time, right? Whenever this component, this home page is open. So we'll say auth.count. Each time the count changes, it's implemented like we are fetching it again and again. I want to refresh it every time I'm going to change the auth count. Set to-dos, we'll say set to-dos initially to empty, and then we are going to say fetch to-dos, which will fetch it again and reset it, right? So that is what we are saying. Now, before we go ahead, let's import use effect. Now it's imported, cool. Now in this home, we need a div, obviously. Now in this div, we will have an h1, which will give us a heading. Let's say to do app. We see here, we see to do app. And in here, after this to do app, we need a input element for, let's create different components for each of the section, for loader, for to do adder, for the list and everything else, right? So before that, let's just simply style this. So I'm just going to say class name, my bad. Class name is going to be equals to flex and then flex call. And then I'm going to say items to be at the center and then justify to be at the center. And we'll give it a minimum height of screen. It can be more height, but the minimum height is the screen. Space dash y dash. I'm going to give it a y spacing, the vertical spacing to be of 3 and the padding to be of 5. All right. And for the h1, we'll give some styling as well. For the class name, we are going to make it like text 3xl, and then we are going to make it like font. Font, I'm going to make it like extra bold, and then we are going to give it like tracking wider. Now, tracking wider is used for letter spacing, the gap between each letters. All right. That is what we use it. Now, if we see here, to do app is in the center. Now we need to add other components as well. Now in the components folder, I am going to add multiple components. One is for to do adder, which is an input element. Let's just go and implement that. All right. So I'm going into the components, and in here I'll create a new file called to do adder.jsx, and let's just simply do rfce, and in this we can just code our sub. All right. We build this to do adder. Now in this to do adder also we need to do some stuff. So first of all, let's do the basic things we need. Now when you are adding a to do, you need a title and a button to add it, right? So you need a title, we'll use a use state hook for the title. So title, and then here initially it is going to be empty, and let's just make this the capital. Cool, this is done. And then we get the auth again, we get the auth, and then we also import the auth. So I'm just importing it from here. Register is not in the same folder, so we can't do that. So now fine. Now after this, we also need to import Axios, and this much part is done, guys. Now what we do next is we create an input, a form and stuff. So in this step, what we are going to do is let's create a form. Let's do this action. Now, if you are ever wondering what is this action? Now, these actions were used when we do backend using PHP. Whenever this form is submitted, we make a function call to that PHP, something like that. That is how it works. But for now, we don't actually need it. So yeah, we're going to say class name and we'll say flex is equals to space x3, and then on submit, we will call the like handle submit function. So on submit, I will simply say handle submit. Right now the function isn't defined, so I'm going to remove it. Now inside this form, what we are going to have is simply an input element. Input type text. The type is text, and the value is going to be the title which we had. And on change, what we are going to do is e, and then we will say set title to e dot target dot value. After this, we will give it a type text. Okay, it's already type text, so nothing to change. And then placeholder is going to be something like any new tasks. So I'll do something like this. And after then, let's put in a class name, and the class name, let's give it like border radius of like full, like 50%, padding 3, and then outline to be none. After the outline is none, let's give it a shadow of medium, and then reading of 12. All right, this should do the job. And then let's make it required. You can't add a task without the title, so that is what I'm doing. Now in this form, you also have a button. The button type is going to be submit. And after this, we'll have a class name for it as well. But before we add a class name, I want to get an icon instead of a something. So I'm going to do for MUI material icons. So these are icons which you can use in your React application. So to import them, you need to do this, install these. So I'm just going to copy this line and then come here, go to my client terminal. It is here, right? So I'm just going to paste it, hit enter. It will auto install it. And you can just search the icon here. I want the add icon, this one. So I can just click on it and I can copy it. I can paste it here, and in this button I will use this add icon. It's as simple as that. That's how you can use icons. Now Material UI provides more stuff than just an icons. If you can see something like all components, it provides you things like these. You can automatically use them. Now, Material UI is a cool library. Whenever you are building projects or something, go to this site and see once. Like they provide us UI components, style components, a lot of stuff. If I include this entire thing in this video, it's gonna be like a lot. So yeah, this is not the right time to learn MUI, but yeah, the basic thing I taught you how to use icons from it. That is pretty useful and pretty good. Now we'll just style it. Let's give it a BG of blue, let's say 400. And then let's just make the text to white. This will change the color of this plus icon to white. And then let's just say rounded to full. And then the height is going to be 12. And let's just give the width to be 12. And then shadow to be medium. And then let's say transition all, and whenever I hover over that icon, I want to change the background to BG blue 500, a little darker. So here after hover we need a colon. If I hit save now, go to here, I haven't added the component yet. So yeah, this is the component. If we go to home.jsx, I can add the component now. So I'll do something like to do adder. Okay, I'm not getting suggestion. Yeah, I got it. So if I do this, I got some error, I guess. Reference error, use state is not defined. So we need to define it. Cool. Anything else? So yeah, you can see this input, this plus icon when I hover over it. We see this, right? If I refresh, there are no errors. Now what is the next thing? We need to define our function. It's as simple as that. The handle submit function, right? So what we are going to do is const handle submit. It's an asynchronous function, and in this function we'll equals to e dot prevent defaults. And after this, what we are going to do is try, and in this try we'll say const response is equals to await for axios dot, because it's a post request, because we are posting data to the database. It's a post request, right? We defined it previously. So yeah, the same thing. We just get this, copy till here, paste it, and then we say slash todos. And then we pass in the body, we pass in the title, and remember we also add a description in the model. I haven't created any field, but if you want, you can create it. So initially it is empty. I'm setting it to empty. And then let's also provide it with some headers. So headers is going to be authorization. Authorization is going to be author.token. Now this is fine. Now this is the response. This is the headers. Find this. After this, what we are going to do is we'll say if response.data dot success, if we get a success, in that case, what we are going to do is we'll say set the authentication simple to dot dot dot, and we are just incrementing the count because we have added a new thing. So I want you to reload the entire data, right? That is what we are doing. Once we have added this, we are going to do something like set auth. I mean, not set auth. We will say set title to be an empty. Now you might be wondering why we are doing authcon dot plus one here. Now, if you see here in this home, I'm calling the fetch to-dos whenever the auth.count is changing. So whenever a to-do is added, it means the to-do list is updated, right? So I'm just simply refreshing all the to-dos I have. Now this is not a very optimized way, but yeah, it works for this case, right? What would be the optimized case? To add, to create a list, and we can just simply update the database later on. But for now, I'll just directly add it into the UI. That would be the optimized way. But for now, this works. So let's keep it that because I want to create a simple application. So that's why. So we have the set title. And after this, what we are going to do is we'll say else. In this else, we'll simply say toast.error. And in this error, responsible data.message. And then we will have our catch block as usual. Catch error. And then we are going to say toast.error, error.message. Now we are good to go. Now we can add tasks for users with this, I think. So right now we are on naruto@gmail.com, right? Let's try adding something. So I will say something like task one and click on plus. Axios is not defined, my bad. Let's say Axios. Now it's defined. Let's click on plus now. It's gone. I think the task should have been added. We should see the task here. If I try refreshing this data, so I hope it works fine. And yeah, you can see the to-dos is updated. Here is an object ID. Now, if I go to the to-dos, you will see task one. Now, guys, it's working cool. Now, yeah, now we have created a to-do header. What's the next thing? Now we need something like to-dos, something to show the to-dos, right? So let's create another component, new file called todos.jsx. Now this will show us a list of to-dos. That's all. So here what we are going to do is, let's say RFCE, and this is it. In this, what we are going to do is, it will get the list of to-dos, or you can say the array, which we can just map and show the to-dos. So inside this divs, what we are going to do is, we'll say to-dos dot map get each to-do, let's say e comma index, get the element and its index. So now in this element, what I'm going to do is, I'm going to pass in another component called as to do card. Now we haven't defined it yet. We have to. Now, as I told you, whenever we use the map, we need to pass in something as a key to the child component, right? So let's make it capital C and then let's pass in a key. The key will be index itself, the I, and the data is going to be E, the data about the to do. All right. Now this is fine. Now let's create another component called the to do card. So let's say to do card dot JSX, hit save, RFCE, hit save, and we can just import it here, to do card, and this is done. In this to do card, we need to create a UI to show the card actually, which will contain a few more icons. And yeah, and after that, we will just have a edit box, which will give us a box to edit the data about the to do, and will our most of our job is done. So in the to do card, what I'm going to do is, uh let's go in this, what we are simply going to do is, let's remove this for now. So we will first get the data in the to do card, right? We were taking data as input as a property, so we got that. Now we will use a use state for this data, the use state snippet, and this is going to be data. And initially I'm setting, let's call this as to do data instead. And initially I'm setting this data to be the data which we are getting. Let's make this set to do data, and then we get the auth. Let's get the auth. So here we can get the auth, and let's just import this auth from the context. Cool, we are done with this much stuff. And then we will create one for the edit box as well, one use state for the edit box as well. This use state is to whether I show the edit box or not. That is why we are going to use this. So edit box, set edit box, and initially this is going to be false, obviously. Show it when I click on a button. That's what I want to do, right? Now what I'm going to do is, here I will have all my data. So first of all, let's give it some styling. So let's say class name, margin of 3, shadow of medium, and then rounded of medium, and then let's give it a minimum width of, let's say, 300 pixels. This will be the container of the card, and then I'll say div. All right, this is the div. So inside this div, I want to give specific stylings. Now initially, let's do something like, inside this div, let's create another div. Let's keep it simple for now. There is something I need to do with this div, but let's do that later on. So in here for this div, let's give it a class name of, let's say, flex, and then justify between, and then items to the center, right? And in this, I will give an h2, which will contain the title. I'll say data dot title. All right. Now for this h2 also, I will give some class name. So I'm going to say font, semi-bold, and then text is going to be large, and then I'm going to say the cursor is going to be pointer. All right, this will change the cursor. Okay. Whenever I click on the title, I want to be able to edit the, so I'll say set edit box to true. All right, not like this. We need to say on click. We'll say set edit box. I just need to make it true. So yeah, this is fine. Cool. Now after this H2, now for now let's do something. Let's save it till here and see if we have something. So in the home we have to do adder, and after this to do adder we need to see our data, right? So what we are going to do is if we go if in the home.jsx, let's try seeing it. Let's try seeing the data. So I'm going to say first of all, let's quickly create a loader before because we need to see a loader if the data is not loaded yet, right? So to create a loader, what you can do is we can again use MUI. So in the components, let's create a new file called as loader.jsx. And in here, what we are going to do is RFCE. And if you go to MUI and search for something like loader or progress bar, can we can go for circular progress. And I want this to be my loader, so I can just come here and to actually get it, what you can do is click on expand code. We need to import this guy. Copy this, paste it here, circular progress, and here what I'm going to do is let's give it a class name so that it can take the entire width and height of the screen. So I'll say width full, height is going to be full as well, display is going to be flex, justify to the center, and then items to the center, and then padding y to be 3, right? Inside this div, I can pass in the circular progress and our loader is ready. Now for the home, we can just show the loader whenever the loading state is set to be true. So what we will do here is we'll say if loading is true, then and only then show loader, else do nothing. Okay. And we'll say if to-dos dot length, if there is some to-dos, let's say greater than equals to 1, if to-dos dot length is greater than equals to 1, then and only then show me the to-dos, I mean the component. We need to import that, the to-dos component. So I'm not getting a suggestion right now. So what we are going to do is import to-dos from components to-dos. So here we will pass in the to-dos list. So I'm going to say to-dos equals to to-dos. That's it. Now if we see here, this thing we have been passed. Cool. Now after this, what we are going to do is if we don't have any to-dos, I want to show some text like add task to see them, something like that. So let's say to-dos dot length. If to-dos dot length is double equals to 0, if there is no to-do, then and only then do what? Show me h3 with a class name of let's say text sm and opacity to be 80%, and this will contain something like add tasks to see them here. This should be good enough. And if I hit save, come here, if I refresh, there is some error, loader is not defined. All right, now it should be fine. Now guys, you see we for a few seconds we see the loader, right? So if I add in some data, let's say hello, I should see something, but I don't know why, but I can't actually see anything. So in to do card, Let's say in the todos.jsx, we are showing this. In the home, we are showing the todos component. Here, if I give something like an h1, hello world, I should see this. Yeah, you are seeing the hello world, right? So for the to-dos, if I say log console.log to-dos, okay, circular progress to-do adder. To-do adder is working fine, it's doing its job. We just need to see something here. Let's do one thing. Let's fetch one. So task one dot I'll type in. So as you can see, this is not loading up. This to-do card is not loading up. That is what the error is. We can't see any to-dos, right? Let's try logging this to-dos to see if we have any to-dos first of all. So yeah, we have a to-do. One saying task one and the other one saying hello. We have some to-dos. So if I hide this, we should see this data, right? To-do card, but we are not seeing this. For now, let me just comment this all. And instead of this, let me just put in an H1 and I'll just say hello. So guys, here the error is simply because of the bracket. So yeah, if I can just remove this. Now remember, whenever you are adding some GSX, you need to have them in circular brackets. Circular bracket means we are returning some value. Now if I save it, we should see them here. So error use state is not defined. We can remove this and hit save, and here we need the use state, right? So if I hit enter, it's not imported and you see hello, right? Now if I can remove this hello and then let's just uncomment all this and let's just remove this task as well and it should work fine. Now you can see task one and hello. These were our tasks, right? So that is how it works. So yeah, small minor mistakes again and again. This keeps on happening. This will happen. We can't do anything about that. So yeah, after this, what we do, we had this h2 in which we showed our data.title. Now after this, after this h2, let's create another div which will contain our options. So I'll say div, and inside this div, I will have a checkbox. Now we will consider a checkbox from Material UI itself. So what I'm going to do is let's go to MUI and search here for, let's say, checkbox. And if you come here, click on it, come here, we will just simply get this one. All right. So import checkbox from this, copy paste it. Now this checkbox will show us whether it is marked completed or not. All right. So here we'll say checkbox, and after here, what we are simply going to do is this. If I hit save and see here, you'll see a checkbox. Now currently this is doing nothing. So what I'm going to say, I'm going to give it a state, whether it is checked or not. So I'm going to say checked, and this will be equivalent to the value of to do data dot completed. Now if I hit save, it would be like empty because to do data is currently not that. So you can say component is changing on codes. You can just ignore this error, it doesn't matter. So yeah, just a basic warning it is. So yeah, because we are getting it state directly based on this because it's a use state. That's why. That's a basic like warning kind of thing. So in this, what we are do is on change, we will simply call the function, and here we will create a function like which with the name handle input change, handle input change, we are changing the completed state, and the state will be set to like whatever the to do data is dot completed status. If it is true, change it to false. If it is false, change it to true. That is what this is doing. Right now we don't have that function, so I am going to comment it, and let's write that function first. So this is the to do data, right? So what we are going to create is a function which is like a handler for input changes. So you can do something like this, and after this what I'm going to say is const handle input changes. Let's make it s, or let it be just like this. It's fine either way. Then it will take a field as a parameter, a field and the value, right? So what we do is it's an arrow function, so we have to put in arrows. Fine. After this, what we'll say is set to do data. It will take the previous state. It will take the previous state, and what we are doing is we are giving is the new state. We have the triple dot previous state. After this, we are changing the field and setting its value to be this new value. That is it. IELD, that's the spelling, and it's saved. Now this handle input change function is done. So now we have this on change function totally fine. If I hit save, refresh, now you can see it is working cool. Right? Now after this checkbox, or what you can do is we have to create another function to actually make the changes to the data as well, right? So what I'm going to do is I will create another function to actually make the update to the to do itself. So let's say const in the database, I mean. So let's say handle to do edit. Let's say handle to do edit, and then async, and then we will have the to do object. We will be passing one to do object, and it will it will get take that to do object and set it as the new data. So I'll say try, and in this try we are going to say const response is equals to await, and then we'll again say axios dot, because it's edit, we are using the put request, and then in here we will use the this again. So dollar symbol, the brackets, and this, and after this what we are going to do is simple. We will say slash to do's, and we pass in the to do ID. So we'll say dollar from the to do object which was passed from the to do object. I want you to give me the ID. So we passed in that as well. Now after that what we will say is we will pass in the right. I did this two times, so I can remove this. Fine. Now it is fine. Now in this object what we are sending is we are sending the new title. The new title is equals to this to do object dot title, and then the new description is equivalent to the to do object dot description, and then we will have the completed state is equals to do object dot its completed state. All right, then we pass in the headers as well, and if I say headers, in this headers say the same thing. The authorization is simply going to be auth dot token, that is our author dot token, and yeah, that is it. Now if we hit save, there is some error. Cool, this much, fine, fine, fine. So after this bracket, we'll see if response dot data dot success, if it is true, if success is true, what we are going to say is set auth. We'll say set auth to be dot auth, which is the previous state, and then again the same thing. We'll increment the count. So count is equals to auth dot count plus 1, and that is it. After this, we will make the set edit box to false again. Like this function for both the title editing and marking it as completed. It's the same box for all of those. So we are just setting it to false again, right? If this state is false, we'll just simply say toast dot error. Toast dot error is equals to response dot data dot message. All right. Uh, and now let's write the catch block. So we are going the catch. It catches an error, and then we'll say console dot error, and then we'll do error dot message. If I hit save, now this is the handle to do edit. Okay, if I refresh, yeah, it's fine. So now what we do next? If we come here, we got the handle input change, but whenever we click on after the on change, whenever we say like on click, we also need to mark it as completed. So what we are going to do is something like this. We'll call the handle to do edit and pass in our current to do data, which is the modified version, to this as a parameter. Fine. After that, what we will do is we will create a P which will show us the description briefly, like smallly. So what we are going to do is after this, now this div is for this guy and this div is for this guy. So after this, we'll create a P tag, and in this, let's give it a class name of, let's say, text sm small, and let's reduce its opacity. Let's reduce its opacity to maybe 90, or just slightly less than black. And then within this, we will show it our data dot description. If I hit save, right now there is no description, so it's empty. Now what are we going to do next is after this, what we do, this is it. We need to say something like here, say edit box. Now to show the edit box, we are depending on the variable edit box, right? If the edit box is true, then and only then show me the to do edit box. Okay, I haven't made that component yet, so let's make it first. Then the components folder itself, let's make it the to do edit box, which is like used to make edits to the tasks. So RFCE, hit save, my bad, hit save. Now in this to do edit box, let's quickly make it. So this to do edit box will take in some data. Now what will that data be? It will be the to do data, and then it will take the function handle input change, and then it will take the function edit box handler, and then we can also pass in handle to do edit. Now we are passing in all these. After this, let's get the auth. Now here only we'll get that. So paste it, and let's just import it as well. Import it, and after that we need a use state as well. Use state snippet, and initial value is going to be to do data, dot completed. I'm going to set it to be like checked and set check. Fine. After this, we will have our use effect, and it will change anytime we change the to do data dot completed. Now in this use effect, what we are going to do is we will simply say set the checked to do data dot completed. To do data dot completed. And after this, that is fine for the use effect. Let's just simply import them now. Use effect and the use state as well. Okay, and then we need a function for various icons for to do delete. Right. For the to do delete as well, we will open up the edit box and that we can give it the to do delete option as well, right? We don't need to do anything else. That would be the better way. So let's quickly write a function for to do delete. So const to do delete is going to be equals to async, and in this what we are going to say is try will get to this to do card. Let's just get this much, and in here we'll say to do's. So this is going to be, first of all, let's import axios. So we'll do axios dot delete, and this is like to do slash to do object to do data dot underscore id. So this much is fine. Let's make it to do data, and then here we have to pass in the headers. So headers is going to be something like this. So we will pass in authorization is equals to auth dot token. You need to put in a semicolon here, colon here. Fine. Okay. Now once we are done with this, what we are going to say is like if response dot data dot it is a success. If it is a success, I'll simply say set auth. The same thing as in here. So we are changing the count, and cause we are changing the count, mm, the data will be updated and we'll get the updated data to be shown in the front end, right? So after this, what we'll do is we'll simply call the edit box handler. Now we have to define this function yet. We haven't defined it. So what this function will do is simply close the edit box. That is all, right? So this is the edit box handler. We haven't defined it yet. We will define it. So not a problem. So after this, we'll have else. In the else, we'll simply say toast dot error, and in this error, we will simply say response dot data dot message. Hit save, and then we need our catch block, and in this error, we are going to say console dot error, and here we'll simply say error dot message. Fine, this is cool. Now once this is done, we need another function called handle checkbox change. So const handle checkbox, handles checkbox change. We will take the event e, and in this what we will do is const is check. Now this will be equals to event dot target dot check, right? And whatever its value is, we are going to say set check is going to be this checked value. That's it. Now what we do next is set this box first, right? So in here we are going to have a div. So what I will do is simply copy paste this data, this complete div quickly, and I'll explain you everything one after the other, all right? So coming to this written statement, first of all, let's create a div, and inside this div, we'll have multiple divs. Now this is just the styling structure of the page. So in here, we will have another div. Now in this div, we'll have a div which will give us some spacing, that's all. So let's just create a div, and then here for this, let's give it a class name of let's say height. Let's give it a height of 5, and then flex 1. I'm just using this div for creating some space of height 5, and after this div I can give a close icon. Now what is a close icon? If we come here and go to again MUI icons, if we go to material icons, search for MUI icons, and you will find this on Google pretty easily. So in here what I want is I want a close icon. So this is the close icon. Now this icon will be used as a button to close the edit box, right? So what I'm going to do is import it at the top. We imported it pretty easily. And after that's done, we'll simply say close icons, and we set close icon. Now in here what we'll say is whenever I click on it, what I want you to do is simply say edit box handler, call that function. And I want to do some basic stylings for it as well. So I'll say class name is equals to padding of 1. Let's make it rounded full. I want to make it a circle, so rounded full, and then let's give it like a transition of all, and then let's give it some like hover. Background is equals to, this time we are going to give it an RGB a color. So I'm going to make it a black shade, so 0,0,0. Okay, my bad. 0.2. Fine. Now after this close icon, what we are going to do is we need checkboxes for title and completed check. We need one for the title, one input, and one for the completed checkbox. So these are the two things which we will need. So after this, what we are going to do is we'll create a div with a class name flex and item center simply, that will keep things proper. And after this, we will create the checkbox component again. We'll use the checkbox, and in this checkbox component, what we are going to say is make check is equals to checked. Fine. And after this, we'll say on change. On change, what I'm going to do is handle checkbox change. After this, we'll have that input. So input type text and input type text. After this, we'll have a placeholder. Placeholder is equivalent to title, and then value is equivalent to, and the value will simply be something like to do data. Yeah, we have that object, right? The to do data object, and then we'll say to do data dot title. Now after we do this, what is the next thing we are going to do is, so we will simply say something like, okay, so we will simply say something like on change, and on change we'll take the event, and then we'll say handle the input change, change the title, change the title to be e dot target dot value. As simple as that. All right. So once we have this much, let's give it some basic styling. Let's say class name, shadow of medium, and then outline of none, and then padding of 2. Cool. Now this much part is done, and what will be the next process? The next process is simply going for a tag for the description, right? So after this div, we'll give one for the description. So after this, what we are going to do is we'll create a div. To this div, we'll give some styling. Now the styling will be something like, let's say, flex and then flex call. And after this flex call, we'll say space y and then let's say 1. That's it. Now after this, what we are going to do is we will simply have something like uh, a label. Let's give it a label tag, and we can just remove this HTML for. Now within this label tag, we'll give it a styling. The styling will be something like, let's just make it simply bold. And in here, let's say description. Description. Now P is missing. The description after this label, we will have the input again. Now, because the description can be huge as well, I'm going to use a text area element instead of an input. So I'll just copy this, paste it, and instead of input, I'll make it text area. Types text, and the value is going to be to do data dot description. To do data dot description placeholder is going to be obviously description, or I can say add a description to your task. We can add something like this. And on change, we can do handle input change. We'll just simply say description. Fine. Now e.target.value, this much is fine. We got the placeholder as well. Class name is going to be the same. So I think this is fine. And now we need another for edit and delete button. So we will just do edit and delete buttons. Now for these guys, what we are going to do is we'll say div. Now inside this div, let's give it a class name again. Class name is going to be flex and then space x. I want the buttons to be side by side, so I'm going to say space x2. All right, now here we need two icons, right? One for the delete and one for the edit. So we'll create a button first. In this button, I will type in edit. Now this button will be used to edit. And again, similar to this, we will have another button which will contain the delete icon, which will be used to delete, right? So we can just come here, search for delete, copy this, paste it here, and here we can say delete icon. It's that simple. Now, if we see this edit box once, I come here right now, we go to do card. We don't have the edit box right now, right? So what we do in the edit box, all right, let's first just complete this to do edit box and then we can go for it. Then we can just check everything at once, right? That's why, so for this delete icon button, what I'm going to do is give an on click. On click, we are calling the to do delete function. And yeah, after the on click, we will have some styling for it as well. So class name, uh, bg blue 500. Let's do 400. And then transition is going to be all, and then whenever I hover over it, I'll give it a bg blue of 500, and then I'll say text white rounded. Cool. And then I'm going to give it a height of 10, and then I'm going to give it a width of 10. Now similarly, we will need to do some stuff for the edit button as well. So here what we are going to do is First, we will have the onClick function, and whenever we click on this, what we need to do is let's set the handle input change to be, first of all, let's mark completed, to be the value of checked, and after this, we'll say handle to do edit, handle to do edit to be to do data. Now, this much is fine. Now, some basic styling for this guy as well. So, we'll do class name. Class name is going to be flex1, rounded full to make it circular, and then justify at the center and items at the center. And after this, we'll say BG of blue, and then we'll give something like 400. Transition all, and then we'll some say hover. We can say something like BG blue 500. And after this, let's make the text color to be white, and then font to be bold, and then padding to be 2, and tracking to be white, right? Now this much part is done. Now that we have completed the to-do edit box. I think we have completed everything from the to-do edit box, and now the simple thing, we go to to-do card and implement the edit box, right? So if we go in here, we have this edit box, right? So in this edit box, if edit box is there, what I want to do is I want to show you the to-do edit box component, and in this I want to pass in some props, right? So the first prop is going to be the to-do data. The to-do data is going to be the to-do data itself, and then the handle input change is equals to the handle input change function, and then we'll say edit box handler is going to be a function which will directly set the set edit box, which will directly set the set edit box to be simply, let's say, false. That's it, because it is just to close it, right? So we'll just say that, and then handle to do edit is going to be handle to do edit itself, right? Now if we hit save, are there any functions which we haven't defined? So we have defined the handle to do edit, we have defined the handle input change. So I think most of this stuff is done. If we come here, if I click on this, so this is the to do edit box. So we are missing on some styling for this, but yeah, you can see we get something. So what I'm going to do is, if we go to this, we are just supposed to do some basic stylings to it, right? To the to do edit box. We come here. So now to this, okay, for these we need to do some changes, right? So for this, I want to be it like I want to it in the center of the page, and I don't want any of these things to change. So I want to use a fixed location thing. So I'll just say class name. So I'll say position, make it fixed. From top, make it 0. From left, make it 0, and make it flex. Justify center, and then items to the center, and then give it a height of screen, and then give it a width of screen as well, and then give it a background of, let's say, RGBA, and here we can do something like 0 comma 0 comma 0 comma 0.4. This should be fine. And then let's give it a backdrop. Let's get a backdrop of blur, a small blurry feature of this, and then we are going to make it z index to be 1000. So what I want you to do is, okay, once I do this, I'll explain, okay? So whenever this edit box is come, whenever I click somewhere outside it, I just want to give it a darker background. That's why I have done this backdrop blur. All right. So the next thing is going to be this div. So let's go to class name. Let's give it a BG of white. and then padding of 3, and then rounded MD. Okay, my bad. Rounded of MD, and then we are just going to say shadow of MD, shadow of medium, and then a flex, and then I want it in column direction, so flex call, and then space y7. This is good. Now for this div, we need to do something a little. So we'll just say flex and then justifies to the between. I think we had done everything. Now if I hit save, you can see it looks something like this. So guys, our to-do app is finally complete. I hope we don't get any errors. Let's test it out. So right now this is the task. I'm going to say task 2, and if I hit plus, you will see task 2 is added here. If I mark hello as completed, okay, we got an error when we mark as completed. Let's see what the error is, right? So we are getting an internal server error. What is it? Let's see. If you see, we can see some error here. Cannot read properties of undefined reading to string. So let's go to the server and let's go to the controller, to do controller. We are marking it as completed, right? So it is saying we are not saying a function like this to string. Is that it? Oh, yep, it is some error in here and to do card 47. So to do card 47 is directly this. It's getting some error in here. The handle to do edit. So let me just find the error. So guys, I tried debugging it here and there, and here we do to do dot users. Okay, if I show you this log, I tried to do this to do dot is to string. If I hit save and try updating something here, you see what it will return me. It is returning me to do dot find one and this ID, which is what? Which is the command. So you could see something missing here, right? Which is what? Simply the await statement. So we are not having any, we are not waiting for it to give a value. We are directly going to the next step. So how will it work? So now if I hit comment for this, and it should work fine now. So right now this is it. If I do, you are not authorized to edit this to do, my bad. Again an error. What can I do very wrong? This is all right. What might be error? Okay. To do dot user dot toString. I changed it while debugging. So if I do this, now it's working fine. I don't see any error at least. All right. I don't see any error, but it's still not working, right? So what we are supposed to do is in this, we are going to, okay, we are supposed to change this to not completed. Whatever it is, make it opposite of that. So now it should work. So now you see it is working. If I mark it as completed, it's mark it as completed. So now this much part is cool. Now, but I need one small change. If I want to edit it, you can see hello, I'll make it hello 2. And if I click on edit, it's done. If I click on hello 2, and if I click on delete, it's deleted. So it's pretty simple, right? Now I want one more feature. Let's say we are adding some task 3. If the task is completed, I want it to be like shown like in a different shade. So for that, what we can do is we can simply come here to this to do card, I guess. In this to do card only, we have to do some certain styling in this div, which I told you if you remember precisely. So yeah, in this what we are going to do is we are going to create an optional styling. Like if it is completed, then show me this styling. If it is not completed, show me this styling. That is what I want to say. So yeah, how do we implement that? So for this div, let's do something like class name. And in this class name, what we are going to use is we are going to, instead of this, we will be using backticks because we are going to check the state of the completed. So we are going to use backticks. So the default styling is going to be a padding of 3. We are going to get a rounded of medium, and along with this, we are going to say this. Now, if data is dot completed is true, if it is completed, then and only then reduce its opacity to let's say 70, and after that I will make its background. Okay, here I will change its background to let's say RGBA, not here, RGBA. We will make it 0 comma 0 comma 0 comma 0.1. That should be sufficient. Now if I hit save, now you see the one which is completed in is slightly different, right? If I mark it as completed, it will be different as well. If I unmark it, it's different. I can edit it. Let's make it task 56 and add a description to it. Hello world, and edit. Now you see hello world here. Now if I add some task to it, this one, this one is the most important, let's say. If I edit, you'll see this is done. So this is how it works. It is working pretty fine. So yeah, guys, this is the entire application. So guys, this is it for the complete application. We built all the features completely from scratch, the back end, the front end, everything. So in this video, we covered material UI basics, we covered Tailwind CSS, we learned about how to implement React, along with the backend, how to merge them. We learned a lot of crazy stuff, and I know this video has been a very long one, but yeah, we'll do learn a lot as well, right? So in the next video, I will be teaching you how to actually build these kind of applications faster and quickly using AI. So the next one is going to be a very important one for the current world. As I said, I will prepare you as per the AI world. So yeah, we are going to learn about the AI and how to use AI faster. I mean, how to build faster web applications using AI. So for that video, just wait a little long. It will also come very soon. And yeah, that this is like the now with this video, you are like a Munstack developer. You know how to build web applications using web development. And I hope if you have any kinds of doubts, don't keep them in your mind. Throw them in the comments, throw them at ChatGPT, throw them at Google. Just empty that doubt from your mind. That is what is the most important task for you to do. So with that, you finally became a Munstack developer. You know all the basics you should know about Munstack web development. And yeah, I'll meet you again in the next video, and we will round it off. We will round it off this playlist in that episode itself. Until then, bye guys.